Okay.
Ben, you're on mute.
Gets me every time. Good morning, everyone, or afternoon now. I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to order, and thank you for joining us today. This is a public meeting, and all audio and video is being streamed to YouTube for public viewing. If you are not speaking, please keep your microphone on mute so our guests today have faces to present to. Please keep your video feed on when you are able. Before we get started today, I did have some news to share. We learned yesterday that Christy Nelson's father passed away on Tuesday. She is understandably not attending today or tomorrow's meeting, and I'd just like everyone to keep her and her family in your thoughts and prayers at this time. This afternoon and tomorrow, we have the pleasure of hearing from our university and KCTCS presidents and engaging with them on how their campus is helping to achieve the overarching statewide goals. This meeting series is a favorite among the council. This year is no different, even though we are meeting virtually. The pandemic has created new challenges, has forced our campuses to rethink the way they do business, and the council is looking forward to not only hearing how they have performed in the past year, but also how they have evolved during the pandemic and how they plan to continue to innovate to meet what the future holds. Before we get started, I wanted to direct your attention to the visuals that were created for today and tomorrow. The campuses will not be using slides, and instead we'll be referring to the data scorecards that Heather mailed to us last week. So you should have a stack of these ready to go. In your packets, you should have several documents, including 10 of these on 11 by 17 paper, one for each campus, one for KCTCS, and one with the statewide data. If those did not arrive for some reason or you misplaced them before today's meeting, same data can be found in your onboard meeting materials. And for those of you who are watching on YouTube today, you can access the same data scorecards by clicking on the agenda link for today's meeting on the CPE meetings webpage. The format for today and tomorrow will be the same as in previous years. Each president has a 30-minute time slot with no more than 15 to 20 minutes of that being prepared remarks. This will leave at least 10 minutes for the council to engage and ask questions at the end. To make sure I don't miss anyone who does want to speak, I'd like to encourage everyone to use the raise hand function in Zoom during that Q&A portion. If you don't know how to use that function yet, Heather will post a short tutorial in the chat box. Are there any questions on the process before we get started? Before we hear from the presidents, it's always best to set the stage with the statewide data and trends. I would encourage you to find the first sheet in your packet, the statewide trends data sheet. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Aaron Thompson, CPE president, for a few words before then hearing from David Mahan. President Thompson.
Thank you, Chair Branstader. Good afternoon, Council. I will make mine very few words because David is really he has the knowledge you want to get here. But just a couple points that I'll make. What data you're looking at are data, metrics, and so on. You folks approved. So just to let you know that for those who are fairly new on the Council. These are also data that helps us to be informed about where we go next. And starting as of Monday, as Lori can tell you, we are starting the new strategic agenda setting process. So as you're thinking about what we're going to do in the future, as Chair Branstader so charged us with, how do we think about the future now after even having this last year? I want you to think about it within the context of how far we've come, where we yet need to go, but also how to lend your voice to helping us to get there. And I think these are crucial ways of thinking about how the questions you're going to be asking these presidents as they present their data and how it fits into this overall agenda. So I did want to kind of set that up just to encourage you to think about being really engaged in the process of building our new agenda and the kind of data that you'll like hearing. One other last piece. You know, when we started this 5 years ago, some of you may remember, or the way we were getting data, you were not pleased with all the time, simply because it seemed like it was always behind. And I have to tell you, before bringing David along and before we've really increased our technological capabilities, I mean, we've come a long way in that area too. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out that David and his crew has done an exceptional job. And unless you probably have gotten used to it now, but I just wanted to point out it wasn't always this way. So Chair Branstader, that's my few words.
All right. Thank you, Aaron. David, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair Branstader.
Do we need to do a roll call for this?
No.
Okay.
No, we don't
Just
need to
making
do
sure. Just making sure.
And Heather, if you would go ahead and share the PowerPoint. So as Chair Branstader said, this is the favorite meeting. It's definitely the favorite meeting for our crew. We work on this to basically showcase all the metrics, and I'd like to thank my team. Travis Muncie is going to present with me, and we'd also like to talk to give a big shout out to Carrie Hodge, who put these placemats together and did validation with the campuses. Next slide, please. So one of the challenges we have in 30 minutes, we have to be able to impart a tremendous amount of information to you guys, and you guys have to be able to digest it and make sense and ask questions. And then, you know, that's true of each of the campus presentations. And so what I did here was just try to boil down really about 29 different metrics into digestible parts, if you will. And so you see under opportunity, we have the college going rate, enrollment, and net price. So we're going to talk to you guys about that. So opportunity in the strategic agenda is very much about access and getting more students into the pipeline. Success is just what it sounds like. Really student completion, retention rates, graduation rates, you know, getting more students across the stage. And just looking at the overall number, but also looking at groups that we know have been underserved. And then finally, in the impact area, we're going to talk about degrees and other credentials conferred in terms of the yield or the production of that to meet workforce demand. So we'll talk about STEM-H degrees, and we'll talk about the number of low-income graduates or graduates that are students of color. So you get a sense for how we're rolling out the strategic agenda in terms of the graduates that go into the workforce. And so we always touch on 60 by 30, but I won't do the slides here because I think we've covered that in previous meetings. So I'd like to introduce to you Travis Muncie, who also has built an interactive report on the data center. So all of this can be also accessed through the data center. And we feel like that could be another avenue for you to drill down and look even deeper. So you have kind of this hybrid between both the hard copy and the PDF and the interactive report. Next slide, please, Heather.
And good afternoon. And just to reiterate what David just said, you know, basically there are a few options to kind of see this for yourself, to see these metrics through the PDF, through the hard copy, and then also we've updated all of these metrics with all new data on the progress report dashboard, which can be accessed through the CPE data center. But to get us started, so of course, you know, the in-state college going rate is very important. It is a metric that that we track. Unfortunately, you know, it looks like we've actually been trending downward in that respect. And this is the in-state college going rate. So this would be students who actually matriculate to in-state institutions. And that would be for four-year public, four-year private, and KCTCS institutions. But as you do see, even with that low number, gaps also do exist when disaggregated by gender and race. As you see, even at that 50.5%, only 46% of males matriculate into matriculate into in-state colleges as recent graduates. Only 47% of African-American or Black students, and 49% of Hispanic and Latino students. One thing to note, when we do include, because we do have that ability through the National Student Clearinghouse, when we do include out-of-state students, so students that matriculate out of state, and also students who matriculate to, say, for-profit institutions. Then we do see that number increase by about 6%. So say, for example, 2018 was actually 58%, but that's still well below the national average of 69%. One avenue that we do see that could help this trend is with dual credit, and you'll see as a note here, of students who have a dual credit experience, they actually attend college at a much higher rate. As you see, 76.5% of dual credit participants do matriculate. So we do see dual credit as a good avenue to actually increase this number.
Travis, I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
When you said the students matriculate out of state, you're not talking about people from out of state coming here. You're talking about folks that graduate from high school in Kentucky and they go to school like in Indiana or Ohio or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. And so we track it as InState just because, that's the data that we have, but we do have other data sources where we can expand that. And we do plan to do that more in the future. But even with a 6% bump, we're still well below the national average.
And does that include any of the smaller like liberal arts colleges in Kentucky as well?
Yes. So
Okay.
that would be our 4-year privates, our 4-year publics, and ACTCS.
Got it. Okay, just making sure.
No problem.
Travis, the national average, has that been going down similar to what we see in Kentucky?
David, are you aware of that overall trend?
It has not, Dr. Stat. We are going the wrong direction, but the national average has been pretty stable, between 60 and 70% for 2 to 3 years running. So we are seeing a decrease that the national average is not showing.
And in some places it's increasing, in some places it's remaining fairly static, but we are going down, true. We are going against the norm.
Okay, thank you.
So one of the very important topics that you guys will be talking to the presidents about today, and I think that they'll probably lead with the conversations of enrollment. So we're getting so many questions here, at the state level, at the council, and the campuses are continuously monitoring and reporting out on enrollment. So this is fall 20 enrollment. And so the last we talked about it, we did preliminary enrollment. This is the final numbers. And so let's first talk about the first-time students, what most call the freshman class. And you see that the 4-year publics are down 0.8%. This is a huge win. And if you want to compare that to the national number for first-time students, nationally, institutions are down 10.5%. So we really feel fortunate. The other question that I get frequently is, of the 4 institutions that actually increased their freshman class, did they overcompensate, or did they compensate by pulling in additional out-of-state students? And the short answer is no. And you can definitely have these conversations with the presidents who will know all the nuances on their particular campus. But most of the increases were in-state. And so we feel like it was this particular class was very focused and well recruited. And so we're going to have to be watching the next class, who has been doing mostly remote learning in their high school senior year. And so it's really a point of focus for our campuses.
David, I don't want to take a lot of time, but if you bring up those points, I have to make a couple of we thought the out-of-state number was going to be way, way, way down because of COVID. They ended up being flat, which was a huge win. The second thing is we got all of our folk together on a big FAFSA push out too, that ended up making our in-state enrollment actually really good by comparison. But we recognized the opportunity for this trend, and we jumped on it early last spring. So I did want to put some context around your statements.
Yeah, thank you. And so we should also say that, the numbers at KCTCS, you can see that they grew significantly with first-time students into that fall of 18, and now they're decreasing. This is very close to the national number. The national number is 18.9% decline, and we're at 18.2% decline. So something to keep a very close eye on, and the KCTCS folks will be able to talk to you further about that. Next slide. So when we look at the overall undergraduate enrollment, if you start with the four-year public and you see we're down 2.1%, the last presentation I did with you guys on the preliminary enrollment was flat, was at about 0.5% decrease. The primary difference is when we were talking about preliminary, we were talking about degree-seeking undergraduate students, where this 2.1% includes all undergraduate students. And so what's going on behind the scenes there is a decrease in dual credit numbers at the four-year public. And so we'll need to keep a very close eye on this because, of course, we know that that's very important for the college going rate and getting more into the pipeline. Certainly not good news there, but I would say overall that 2.1% is good news, even though that's down relative to the national numbers. It is right there around 2%, so 1.9%. KCTCS also is reflective of the national numbers, about right around 10 to 11% down. One of the areas that I'd like to highlight is the adult number. And so this is another area of focus as we come out of, hopefully come out of, quarantine and COVID-19 environment, that you would see a rebound in the enrollment specifically at KCTCS. In the fall of 11, we had over 75,000 adults enrolled in post-secondary in Kentucky. And that was after, the 2008 recession. And so, we don't know how it's going to play out in this current environment, but it's reasonable to expect that more adults will come back to reskill and change careers at multiple credential levels.
And speaking of net price, so jumping back in here. So just for context, so basically when we say net price, what we're saying is we look at the total cost of attendance for a student, and that would be anything from, tuition and books to, housing, things of that nature. So the total cost of attendance, and then what we do is subtract out all sources of grants and scholarships. So that would be, federal, state, and institutional aid out, and then we get the net price. So this is basically what's left for the student, and that could be, and that could be compensated for with loans or, out of pocket. But just wanted to give context of what we're looking at when we say net price. But basically what we're seeing from a trend standpoint, looks like for the last 3 years, it's really flattened out. And even this last year, we've seen a drop in net price in both the comprehensive universities and the research institutions. So out of 5 of the 8 institutions actually had a decline in net price. But even the ones that didn't have a decline, it was still very, very flat. It was a very low increase. And what we expect from going forward with COVID is this should probably continue to stay flat, just because from the tuition setting standpoint, almost all institutions did not increase tuition. So we hope to see this stay flat going forward. For KCTCS, there was a slight increase this year, but even with that slight increase, they were trending downward. So that increase is still below the 2015-16 baseline. The next slide, please.
So as we go through graduation rates, this is an area that we really like to take a couple of minutes and focus on it, because although, as you see from that first takeaway, that this is the fall of 14, this is also such an important metric to see if all of our student success efforts are fruitful, if you will. And you can really see a nice increase, a trend increase, all the way back, to 2015-16 baseline. So it's a really steady increase. And that steady increase is across all these the subpopulations as well, of low income and URM, underrepresented minorities. So in other words, it's just been a very positive reflection of our campus, our four-year public institutions, of being able to get more students across the stage regardless of their background. And so we're very hopeful, and it's a very positive thing that we are seeing, this uptick. Again, the national average is right around 60%. And so as we get to 56.4, from a baseline of, 50.6, it's really remarkable that we've been able to go 6 percentage points up.
David, I'll just quickly add that the target we just made it the national average target. We were going to push it hard. We understood it was a really, really, really far-stretched target, as you all some of you were involved in it, but we wanted to put it there just simply as a way to shoot it. So if you know anything about graduation rates or retention rates, any of those things, to move any of these 1 percentage points is like moving mountains to some degree. And we have another slide just to show you some leading indicators that really point in the positive trajectory on these. So to move it that amount in that many years, and Bob Stat can attest to this, is a huge endeavor. So I wanted to make sure I give some context around that too.
Yeah, thank you, President Thompson. And just as an FYI, and this is something, Kim, we've talked about quite a bit in terms of, how many students, are we talking about? So this cohort is about 18,000 students, right? So each 1 percentage point move is about 180 students. And so you're talking about, just in the last year, getting another 250 students to matriculate than the previous. And so we're certainly excited about, these results. Next slide.
This is great. This is great data, David, and certainly very encouraging amidst some downward trends in other areas that don't look so great. This is really encouraging to see, and certainly a huge improvement from where we started. So thank you for that.
So next slide. So KCTCS also has increased, and we certainly have seen a lot of struggles over the years, with a population that is they will tell you is much more diverse, and their proportion of underprepared is higher, and yet moving to this 36.3% is quite an accomplishment. About 2/3 of their students are in fact low income, and so that 32.7 is quite significant. And I'll also say that the 24.3 on the URM is quite an accomplishment as well. So about 2/3 of their students of color are from low income backgrounds. And so that orange bar really represents, two groups of underprivileged or underserved, if you will, in terms of students of color, and mostly from low income backgrounds. So really a lot of progress there as well. And that cohort size, just so you know how many students we're looking at here, is right around 7,500 students. So each 1% increase is about 75 students.
And so piggybacking on what Dr. Thompson said, we do have some very good leading indicators on, our future graduation rates. And one of the biggest predictors of graduation rate is, of course, retention rate. And with retention rate, we've seen some great news and some great progress. So looking at this year's retention rate, we actually were able to get over the 80% mark for the four-year public universities this year, the overall mark, but we've also been able to close gaps. And you see a big increase in both low income and URM students when it comes to first to second year. With our retention rates, two out of the 3 of the targets have already been met. And we do expect, going forward to see these retention rates, or the improvement of these retention rates, to really reflect in the graduation rates. So hopefully we'll see probably probably in 2015 or whatever, when we see, you know, these students graduate, we'll also see these big jumps, you know, with low income URM and overall in the graduation rates, because this is probably our best short-term indicator, you know, because graduation rates, it's, you know, 6 years out from the cohort, but retention rates really give us a good perspective of, you know, what we're going to see in graduation rates going forward.
Travis, let me jump in and say something really fast. I know we have to hurry, but I wish we had more time to give you context around this. The magic thing for all of us has been doing student success for me way too many decades. It's always been, if you ever get to an 80% retention rate, for some of you know this, then you are really operating at a level, you know, those things you're doing is working at a very high level. But you may remember when I took over this job, we talked about it. We have closed those gaps, which is the best indicator we have toward a lot of things, degree attainment, as well as degree rates. Graduation rates. If you look at 2018-19, where we were at between underrepresented minorities, look at that percentage difference in gaps. We raised all of this, by the way. We just didn't stick and keep one group below so we could close gaps. We raised them all, but we closed within 2 percentage points between our underrepresented and our overall. And we're almost at the national average now. I mean, so that, if you want to look at whether or not the things we implemented in this agenda has worked, that's a good indicator there.
And for KCTCS, we see a similar story. So still trending up with retention rates. Again, you know, KCTCS is also doing a job of closing the gaps. And they have met the target on all three, for all three groups. And we've actually moved that target a couple times for them, and they've met it every time. So, you know, like I said, with KCTCS, we also see a similar trend in not only closing gaps, but, you know, the overall trend of increasing those rates over time.
So the last two slides, you guys have actually seen the degree counts in our last presentation, but we thought we would put this in there again because it's super important to see this in context with enrollment. And ultimately, this is what takes us to our 60 by 30 attainment goal. So you know that we need 1.7% average annual growth rate to stay on par. And in many cases, with the four-year publics, they have exceeded that growth rate. The big number that we're watching very carefully is that 19,147. And so that's a 0.7% growth from the previous year. So not a tremendous amount of growth in baccalaureate degrees in this previous year. And you guys know how much progress we've made over the last 5 to 6 years from performance funding. So we're going to have to watch that as a soft spot. But also, it's very much a reflection of the actual retention and graduation rates. So since enrollment is down, the difference is that we can stay flat based on graduating more of the students that we do have. But enrollment is going to be a really important piece to continue to increase this number. And a lot of it is going to have to come from those returning adults, and it won't be possible just to come from the first-time students, although we can increase that first-time student number by getting our college going rate up. But the big highlight on this slide is that the URM number, that 2583 to 2707, is just at 5% increase. And, you know, that's tremendous progress considering some of the struggles that we've had in the past. And then the last slide, Heather. KCTCS is another big success story just in terms of overall counts. And we know the enrollment has decreased there, but they're still able to get more students to complete. And so if you look at these 2021 targets, what's really interesting, we went through an evaluation process for the midterm review of the strategic agenda. And President Thompson asked them to continue to stretch their targets and bump higher, and they really did. And so that 38,266 is the overall number. That was increased from 33,488. And so they increased the number, and then you see the 39,291 in 1920, they surpassed their new target. And so we are just really hopeful and thankful of the efforts there. And it's very, very impressive, and that you'll want to talk with the KCTCS folks in more depth on this very slide.
David, with the KCTCS credentials, how many of them are associate degrees versus certificates?
Yes, so 2 points there, Dr. Stat. One is this is an overall count of credentials. And so
Correct.
You see about 2 certificates per completer. So about half of that is the number of actually unduplicated student count. That would be first. So you're right at that 20,000. And of that 20,000, about 2/3 of that proportion is in fact short-term certificates. So that has very much supplanted the number of associate degrees. But I can also tell you that the number of associate degrees trended up in this last 1920 ever so slightly. So they've maintained their level there, and that's a lot of the ASNs and RNs. So that's an important count. And then they've really increased their number of short-term certificates.
I want to make one last quick statement. I know we're out of time. There's 4 things I want you to remember here. We doubled down on trying to make sure we get those middle skill certificates at KCTCS out so people can get to work. That has worked. Thank goodness. We've closed that gap. The second thing is our diversity, equity, and inclusion policy has clearly shown to work. So I want to give that team some credit. Our performance funding model has worked beautifully, so to be honest with you, in ways that as drivers. The fourth thing I would ask you to look at, David made a statement, and I know somewhere along the way, Chair Branstader will say something about this. We've been getting the most out of the students we got in many ways, but we have to start worrying fairly soon about the incoming enrollment classes, because this will have an effect in such a way. So I know we'll talk about the P20 later on, but those are 4 quick points I'll make.
All right, Aaron and David, Travis, thank you very much for this introduction and summary on this. I'm sure you guys could have talked for a couple hours, but we appreciate you pulling that down into 30 minutes, even though President Thompson took us over there for a second. So thank you. And if anything comes up during the course of the next day and a half, I'm sure you guys will be on standby. Earlier in the week, I did want to let everybody know Heather reached out to the council members to obtain some feedback on their hot topics heading into the meetings for today and tomorrow. We did receive a couple of comments, and I just wanted to pass those along as we're hearing from all the presidents today and tomorrow. The themes were interested in enrollment. There's also discussion about how to partner with our K-12 school districts, and I'm sure that President Thompson can address that tomorrow as well in his discussion. And then an overall mental health of the students and feedback with respect to online learning for the students over the past 10 months or so. David, with respect to all the data, content and data that you did provide, the nice thing is we are above the line, so to speak, with respect to our trajectory for the strategic agenda, which is good. The good news that's coming out of this. However, I think that's what I consider to be a tailwind. Part of the headwind is going to be the enrollment numbers and seeing where we can make sure we get enough students through the system so that we can continue to trend above that line as well. So we are just a couple minutes behind schedule. So I'm going to now introduce Dr. Beverly Schneller. She is the vice provost at Kentucky State University. President Brown was not able to join us today, but Beverly, thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours. We've got 15 minutes of discussion, and then another 15 minutes of questions and answers for you. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. I do want to let you all know today was our regularly scheduled board retreat on our campus with our Board of Regents. So Dr. Brown is still with the Board of Regents at this point, but he will make an effort to join us. So this is my first time to present before you all. So I don't know if it might be 12 minutes or less because I'm pretty nervous, to be honest. So I'm gonna go ahead and get us started. But I'm not familiar really with how you all generally do these. So I'm just going to start with some things I want to call your attention to, and then we'll look at the individual metrics on your placemat. But I think it's important to sort of set a thematic frame for what you're looking at as far as Kentucky State University's data and accomplishments have been since the last reporting period. And you'll notice if you've looked at all of the metrics that there are some significant keys to our success. We have been very intentional about our advisement on campus, especially focused on first and second year retention of students, as the data shows. We have made significant strides in recruitment of students, that not necessarily the metrics themselves, but recruitment of students in general that support the metrics, and then in maintaining our cost of attendance. So as we look across those areas, the data collectively shows a narrative of unique successes for us in advisement, which speaks to our persistence and retention, to our underrepresented students' performance in math and English, and in particularly mathematics, where you see we have a 20%, almost 20% increase in student attainment relative to math. And then of course, our cost of attendance. And when we put those things together, we can see also that those particular advances have allowed us to see a decline in credit hours at graduation. And we'll look at that, of course, specifically. It's not a major decline, but a decline is a decline. And so they're starting to move down. Our first and second year retention rate is up at 79%. Our graduation rate, we're particularly pleased with. It does norm with HBCUs, which have roughly a 30% graduation rate nationwide. But for us, we're up 10% since 2015-16. And this is the highest graduation rate that we've attained in a decade. So we're very pleased with how that particular metric is working. Of course, there's always work to continue to do with that. But at the same time, we are seeing the strategies that we are using working in that area. And then, of course, we also have had significant increases in enrollment, which again are tied to persistence and retention, and ultimately, of course, to our graduation rate. So those are some things that I wanted to put out just as a sort of frame for us so that we can see how Kentucky State is moving forward. And so if we want to go through the individual metrics, and I'll talk to some of the things that we've done in each of those areas that have proven to be successful. So our 6-year graduation rate, as you can see, has increased. And that, of course, is in part due to the fact that we had implemented, because of some things that occurred with the 2015-2016 student cohort, we implemented a program called Crossing the Finish Line. And Crossing the Finish Line was for students who were in the 2015-16 cohort who had either swirled or stopped out. And in 2018 and then in 2019, we continued to recruit those students through direct engagement. We worked with them to develop learning plans that would allow them to complete their degrees. And then we were able to graduate a majority of, I think we graduated all the students actually who had not attained a degree elsewhere by the time that we had gotten to them to try to address that situation. We also are noticing in that same vein that we're improving our graduation rate with attention to cost of attendance and student finance. So we have implemented, and this of course was pre-COVID, so we have implemented some internal programs related to financing. We had a particular program that we did last year called Breads Bounce Back. Our logo, of course, is a thoroughbred, and we refer to our students as Breads. So Breads Bounce Back was a program that was designed between academic affairs and and our Office of Finance and Administration to look at debt for students and then to determine a floor level for the debt and work with the students to attain a zero balance. So that helps students who might not have been able to finish their degrees because of the credits earned to finish the degree with no debt or very low debt compared to what they had before. So when we move to the next area, which is the degrees awarded, again, we're seeing some increases in those areas. Persistence to graduation and number of degrees awarded is a very flexible thing because we're talking about what people's behaviors are and what they decide to do. So we have shown increases in these areas. In different metrics in different years. There's not really a very consistent pattern there as far as the rise is concerned. But we are now involved, I should say, with Degrees When Due, which is a CPE initiative for adult students described as over 25 who have been in school between 2015 and 2020. It's a degree reclamation program. And then we're also involved with Project Graduate for any students who have 90 credit hours or more. And so we're working with those students to increase our graduation rate in that regard. Okay. So when we look at our undergraduate enrollment, this of course is one of the areas that we're particularly pleased about and happy with. And here we have added some significant scholarships that are attractive to our students. These include, of course, our involvement with the Kentucky Connector program. And we also have our Thoroughbred Achievement scholarships that are internal. And in that regard, we're able to incentivize our students with that. And you can see that our enrollment again has increased significantly in our undergraduate population. Our next metric is our first year and second year retention. And I've already talked a little bit about that, but I want to dive in a little bit more deeply to it. Here, we've done quite a bit of work with financial aid and counseling at the admissions level with our students to make them aware of cost of attendance issues. We also have financial counseling that's run through our Office of Financial Aid. We have our pre-college academy, which brings students in the summer to our university to get them started as degree seekers. We have our University College, which is our centralized advising, and our Thoroughbred Learning Center, which provides our students with learning support services throughout their college careers. All of these things have been stood up under the leadership of Dr. Brown since 2017. I arrived at the university in 2018, and so in the time that I've been here in the last 2.5 years, we have really seen these services grow and expand. We expect to have even higher persistence rates for first and second year students going forward because we've added some additional support services that are moving towards a wraparound single service kiosk model for student engagement and for continuing of students in these areas. So we're very pleased with our persistence rates. With the average credit hours at graduation, as I mentioned, this is a metric that is a difficult one, for us to continue to meet, but we have, just because of the way it was constructed originally. And so, but here we do see a small decrease, which is a good thing in this area. And we expect to have continued decreases in number of credit hours so that we will be able to graduate our students at closer to 120 to 125 credits as they move through the cohorts. This one will have a better opportunity to see with the cohorts that have started in 2017, 2018, when they get to graduation, because they'll be the beneficiaries of the advising and the persistence programs that we've developed. So we should see a positive decrease in that number because it means that they're more fit to their degree program at the time that they enter the university, and they're also getting the support services that they need to stay in their degree program as well. So one of the things that we're looking at with our university college advising and also through our Office of Career and Professional Development, is helping the students understand a bit more about what the careers are, what the opportunities are, what the learning needs, the curriculum is for the individual degree programs, to help them make better choices when they choose their major. And then we're also looking at policies across the institution to address issues when students swirl or choose to move between majors, and we're trying to keep them strongly on track towards degree. With the success of underrepresented students in gateway courses, I referenced this at the beginning, where we were part of a CPE grant that tracked performance of students and supported students in math and English. We have used that. We've used those resources to enhance our supplemental instruction models. And we have been using supplemental instructional counselors as part of the math and English courses to augment the things that students have as learning support services through our Thoroughbred Learning Center, and then the things that the individual departments are doing as well to support their students. So you can see on the placemat that we have gone up, of course, in math. We have lost a little bit of traction in English, but my background is in English. And so I can tell you that it's one of the most challenging areas to teach, especially for undergraduate students. And so you have a lot of fluctuation in student performance in freshman composition and freshman writing courses, just by the nature of the class that's recruited and the students that you're teaching. So those kinds of, the kind of movement there is not statistically strong or anything worrisome. It probably has more to do with just variations in student performance. And then when we think about the average net price and the cost of attendance, of course, as we just saw, we're well within the range for the types of fees that are being charged by the public institutions. And so when we look across our placemat historically, things that we're looking at, again, that have contributed to our mission of equity and access, we've added to our mission and really focused on student leadership and student engagement. We have strong programs in assemblies, convocations. Our honors students are involved in different kinds of student orientation activities and various other things that increase their interest and willingness to stay at an HBCU and at our HBCU. Also, we think that we're going to benefit in the coming years from the national trends in student interest in HBCU enrollment. So we're looking at a strong incoming class for 2021 as well. So I'm going to stop there. And I didn't look at the clock. I just looked at the placemat and went through it. So I don't know how much time I have left or how much time I used, but I'm ready.
You did good, Dr. Schneller. Thanks for thanks for providing that.
Yes.
I'll open it up to the floor. Dr. Staton, you are unmuted, so I'm going to call on you first.
Yes, okay. Maybe I don't quite understand one part of the placemat, and that's the degrees awarded. You indicated they were going up. But as I read it, the overall bachelor level doesn't agree with the numbers for all the other aspects. In other words, in 2019 and 20, 105, 103 for a total of 137. That doesn't make sense.
Yes, I'm sorry. I looked over to the target number. I'm sorry. I looked at the wrong thing because I was looking at it. So, we've had a little bit of decline in those areas, and part of that has to do with the performance of that 2015, 2016 cohort class. Yeah.
But the green bar, is that the overall bachelor's degrees awarded?
The 137, yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Well, how come it's 105 for the URMs, 103 for the low income? To me, that's 208 right there.
Okay, let me check and see on that, because let me check with IR and get you a response.
I think there might be double counting there.
I think we're double counting them to be sure, but I think
okay.
that.
Those are not unduplicated. Those are duplicated. What
Okay.
you'll find that many of the low income, they're one and the same, to be honest with you. Make a long story short.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
fine.
That's what I thought, but I didn't want to misspeak.
That helps. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kim Hallbauer.
Thanks, Ben. So first of all, I just want to say you did a really nice job with your presentation. Couldn't tell you were nervous at all. So
Oh,
good
good.
job.
Thank you.
So I was just going to ask a question. I'm impressed to see that you've been able to reduce the average net price and the total cost of attendance, but the gap is widened between the net price and cost of attendance. So is there a shift of something from net price to cost of attendance? I'm just wondering why that gap is getting bigger. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am, I do. It's largely related to inflation, rates of inflation. So the numbers remain the same, but the dollar values change based on inflation. The tuition's been constant.
Okay. So, all right, maybe we'll dig into that a little deeper.
Okay.
It just seems strange. Yes. But anyway, impressive to see that you have been able to reduce that, because that's certainly a critical element, hopefully, that will drive future success.
Yes, it is. And that what's offsetting that too is the number of scholarships that we've been able to increase. Not only the internal scholarships and our programs for our students that are funded by our alums and our foundation, but we are also applying to national scholarship programs as well, which are helping to reduce costs for our students.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? I've got a couple that I'd like to follow up on, but I want to open up to the floor first. But Dr. Schneller, I think you've only been at Kentucky State for a couple of years now, and I believe it was in either 2015 or 2016 that that a kind of an overall agreed upon strategy was worked out with the state in terms of performance metrics.
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to kind of give an overview of how we're doing on those metrics? A lot of them are going to be the same, and then I do have one more follow-up comment on that as well.
Okay. Those are the ones that David showed earlier, the specific ones.
Well,
I think it's talking about your management plan, right, Ben?
Correct. Yes.
Oh, okay. This is the last year of our management plan, as I understand it, and so we have been successful in meeting the benchmarks relative to that. I don't have the management plan in front of me, unfortunately, but we can follow up with that for a more detailed and accurate response.
That would be great. Yeah, I think that if Heather, if you could send that out to everybody, and then probably early next week, that would be great, just to get a sense of scale on that one. I think the last time I looked at it, there were some that we were in pretty good shape on, some that we were not. So hopefully
we did circulate.
We're back in line.
We did circulate for you, courtesy of Heather, what we would have ordinarily brought with us as a takeaway, which was our quadrennial report. We sent that through to her as a PDF to share with you all. And the performance metrics that you're talking about are addressed in the quadrennial report in more detail too. But we do have the actual management plan. I just don't have it in front of me, so I'm sorry. But quadrennial will answer a lot of your questions, in fact, and we just published that in December. It's a brand new report. And so I think you'll find most of what you need in there. Okay, great. And then I'm going to stay on Dr. Statt's topic of the degrees awarded. Yes. I know that the 2015, 2016 was a very challenging time for the university, and it takes a while for that yes, it does.
to recover. Mm-hmm. And I guess in terms of looking at some of the leading indicators, the 6-year graduation rate looking really good, first and second year retention is looking good, undergraduate enrollment is looking good. How much longer do you think? How much more runway are you going to need to turn around the degrees awarded to get that back up closer to our targets there?
I think because we've been successful getting the 15, 16 students through, and then we started a similar program for the 16, 17s to be mindful of that. When Greg Rush was with us, and I was first at the university, we were doing through Project Graduate attention to those students. So we've continued in that area. So I'm going to say probably maybe another two years, I would think we should be seeing some significant increases, because with the incoming class of 18, 19, I think that's when we would really see the impact of the learning support services and some of the other things that we've added to increase the persistence and retention, because that's something we've looked at really closely. Dr. Brown has introduced what he calls the ABC retention: athletics, band, choir, and then student government, veterans affairs, things like that. And we had in some of those areas, just for this year, which is off this table, but I think is relevant to what you're asking, we've had 100% increase or 100% retention in choir. We've had 100% retention in athletics. We have an 87% retention overall in just that group. And then for fall to spring retention in this COVID year, we've had a 90%, we've had an 85% retention rate there as well. So we've been very intentional in reaching out to students and trying to address their needs and to encourage them to continue with us.
With respect to the student, how are things going with the online learning and mental health and kind of some of those other wraparound services? How's that been going for you guys lately?
I would say that we're doing well with those. We moved our counseling services and our mental health services to the extent possible, a mix of face-to-face and online, of course. And we are using the Quality Matters standards for our online courses. So we're moving those effectively as faculty become trained in those areas, but we're using the metrics for QM for the basis of those courses. And we're at about 2/3, I would say, of hybrid and online, and then face-to-face this semester. But the fact that we were able to stand up this time last year, and it's hard to imagine we're talking about it still being a year from now or a year ago, but we stood up immediately in the spring of 2020, our learning support services, and we've continued to grow and expand those, as the pandemic has persisted. And across the summer, we had the same thing as well for summer school students, and then the winter messer. So we've had those 12 months out of the year, and they seem to be helping the students as we had hoped.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Beverly, I know you probably won't know this answer. I'll just ask you to go back. I don't expect you to know it. You may be, but I don't mean to be pejorative in that statement.
Well, let me see if I can surprise you then.
Yeah. I want to go back to Kim's point. Normally, you don't see the total cost of attendance going down because of inflation and so on, unless you actually give back tuition, or if you somehow give away room and board. So I would ask you may not, or you may know the answer, but I would ask you to go back and take a look. I understand why your net price you'd have a lot of influence on that, but normally you don't see that number, and it decreased by $2,000. So that's a significant decrease. So you may know the answer, I don't know, but I think that's where Kim was going. That was my question I had too, Kim, if that's where you were going. So I'd be anxious to know that just sometimes.
Okay, I'll get you an answer for that, because I don't really feel confident talking about that.
Yeah, thank you, Erin. Thank you for clarifying. Yes, that's what I was asking.
I had a question for Dr. Schneller. I'm going to ask all the colleges this, so CP board members, sorry, you're going to hear this question a lot. Obviously, COVID's been impacting. You guys have some pretty significant gains. The trend is looking good. Do you anticipate seeing in 2021 or 2022, do you anticipate seeing a blip? I'm just with everything going on, I just want to know from a prediction, do you see a temporary drop this year and then back on it, or do you think you've been able to weather it, pretty well? What's the data that you guys have right now telling you?
The data we have now is telling us that we're weathering it pretty well. I think there will be, plus minus fluctuations because we're talking about human behaviors and choices. But we implemented the Admit Hub service this past semester through the APLU offering. And so one of the things we were able to do with that in the fall semester was contact students who we were not sure if they were going to come back in the spring, and then, well, actually come back in the fall, then come back again in the spring. And so we contacted students and we had a list of things that they could choose about why they might not come back if they said no. And the majority of the respondents said it was more personal, like their families didn't feel comfortable for them coming back to school, or they didn't feel comfortable just because they didn't know enough about the virus. It didn't have anything to do with us. It just had to do with their kind of global environmental uncertainty about the situation in which we all found ourselves. But the fact that a majority of our students have returned this semester, I think is a good indicator that we will see some movement, but we're also moving forward with the same kinds of intentional activities in our admissions office to reach out to students that we see have not re-enrolled, and we contact them through Admit Hub or through direct calls. And our university college was doing the same as we started the spring semester, just to check and be sure if we could answer a question, because that's one of the things about students often is, they don't ask the question. And so if you call and say, is there anything we can do to help you? Some of those answers we were able to provide for them, and then they return to the campus.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Dr. Schneller, your 30 minutes is up. You did well.
Thanks.
Hopefully we were kind and
very
treated you fairly. So
you surely did.
All right.
Thank you so much. And I will track down those thorough responses for you and get you the data-based answers that you will need for the questions that you ask.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to Eastern Kentucky University, and President David McFadden is just right on cue. Well done.
Well,
same rules apply to you, and so we're going to give you about 15 minutes of discussion, and then of feedback from you, and then we'll hit you up with some questions.
Well, thank you, Chair Branstader. It is good to be with this group. I was very hopeful that when we rolled around to January of 2021, we would all be together in a room having this discussion, but we find ourselves in this circumstance. I'm very envious of David Mahan, as he was able to use a PowerPoint, so we are not. But I do want to say this, in working through the interim presidency and being named the 14th president of Eastern Kentucky University, my good friend, Dr. Aaron Thompson, the staff at CPE have been great support and great advocates, and really great partners for moving the institution forward and moving the state forward. So very thankful for their support. I'm going to generally kind of talk through the scorecard, and then we can have a general conversation. I do have a few observations at the end, and maybe a couple of things that I would ask the council for some support and some engagement on, that I think are some key initiatives that are going to help us as a state move forward. Let me start first kind of with our overall progress. EKU has achieved our 2021 targets in 14 of the 20 metrics, with notable achievements in our 6-year and low-income graduation rates, our URM enrollments at both the undergrad and graduate levels, first year to second year retention for our URM and our low-income students, and then progress of underprepared students in both English and math. And I give a lot of credit to the co-requisite model in math, our adoption of that, and some substantial gains that we've seen in that space. Graduation rates, EKU's graduation rates are at an all-time high, surpassing both the 6-year and low-income targets. Overall, our 6-year graduation rate at 52.3% is the highest reported at EKU ever, and 2.3% above our targeted goal of 50%. Low-income graduation rates at 43.4% are the highest among the comprehensives and surpasses our target of 42%. URM graduation rates at 38.2% have increased 4% since last year, placing us second amongst the comprehensive institutions. And while we have not yet achieved that target rate of 43%, our increased retention of URM students is moving us in the right direction, and we fully feel like we will meet that target very soon. For degree production, URM degrees awarded at 284 have surpassed the target of 218 and is second amongst the comprehensive institutions. STEM H degrees awarded, 819, are meeting the target which was set, and we are second amongst the comprehensive institutions. While we met our overall degree awarded target last year, we experienced a slight decrease from the year before. However, we are still reporting the second highest number of degrees awarded amongst the comprehensives. Additionally, we are confident that these increases in retention that we're seeing are moving students through the graduation pipeline toward graduation much quicker. We've also improved to make major inroads with our low income degrees awarded. So as we have seen those improvements, we are confident that these increases will result in increased graduation rates with our retention rates. We've not reached our goal with our graduate degrees awarded. However, we are experiencing increased enrollments with our online graduate programs, and we are anticipating reaching that target very soon. Retention, I think that David really hit the nail on the head earlier, talking about how important retention is as kind of an indicator of where we're going. We have surpassed our retention and achievement goals, and we have hit all-time highs for our institution. The retention of our URM student population at 80.3% is the highest amongst the comprehensive institution and significantly surpassing our target of 67%. This is also higher than our overall retention rate, and it is starting to close the gap between our URM student population and the rest of the student body. The retention of low-income students is at 76.7%, the highest amongst the comprehensive institution and surpassing our target goal of 72%. Overall retention rate, 79.5%, the highest EKU has ever experienced institutionally, and places us second among comprehensive institutions, surpassing our goal of 75%. I would credit some very innovative programs, some that President Thompson was involved with when he was here at EKU, our EKU Freshman Academy, our Student Success Center, our Knowles Studio for Academic Creativity, our retention scholarships, and our implementation team, which has been working together for over a decade to really start to make impact on these outcomes. I think an important thing to think about when we look at the data we're looking at is that is really, we're looking backwards. There are some snapshots in time, but we don't get to any of these outputs without looking back and understanding that it takes good process, it takes good policy, but most importantly, it takes great people to make this happen. And so as I think about why we're seeing our institutions move in the right direction, why we're seeing the state move in the right direction, it's because we've got some great people committed to the cause of higher education. Credit hours to graduation, EKU is #1 for transfer students in Kentucky. So as we take in those transfer students from KCTCS, please know that those credit hours, kind of as we wrestle with making sure we get folks out trying to hit that 120-hour mark, that can be challenging, but our students are graduating with fewer credit hours on average, and they are graduating with 3 less credit hours than in previous years. We have achieved our target for this. We are engaged in very intensive and very intrusive advising and to improve our 4-year graduation rates to make sure the students are taking those courses that move them toward a degree. And we're using our Degree Works program in a very effective way to move those things forward. Success of underprepared students in gateway courses. I think this is one of our major set of accomplishments here. We have surpassed our targets in helping underprepared students successfully complete English and math gateway courses. In math, we have seen the most significant change from the 15-16 baseline year, and EKU now is second amongst comprehensive institutions in the work we're doing to see student success for our underprepared students in math. In English, likewise, we've seen substantial improvements there, and we are second amongst the comprehensive institutions in the success rate we're seeing there. Contributing, I think, to these achievements and these metrics is the implementation of the co-requisite model I mentioned earlier. We also have wrapped around a lot more academic support for those students. And when we think about the course embedded consultant model, that we've been using in English, that has made a big impact on the success we've seen of our students. This model embeds a peer in English courses who attends the course and works with the students in groups and in individual settings to help them really be successful in that transition to college and trying to get them into credit producing activity as it relates to their underprepared markers for English. Workforce diversity. This is something that I've been very focused on for the last year. I will say that it is hard to move workforce numbers when we're not seeing an immense amount of workforce growth as it relates to hiring of positions. In our management and operations, we're reporting 9.4%, which has surpassed our target of 8.9%. I will tell you that just because we've reached our target, we still have work to do, and we are committed to doing that work. For our tenured and tenure track faculty, that is an area for improvement for us. And we have seen, we've lost several of our EKU family over the last couple of years of those who are underrepresented faculty. And that has been hard for us. And we, as we have looked to replace those positions, we are being very intentional, and we are making some very strategic investments to recruit and retain diverse faculty here at EKU. We have created the first ever Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at EKU, Dr. Danny Moore, who came to us from Northern Kentucky University. Upon his arrival, he has created a Center for Inclusive Excellence. We have hired a director for that program, and we have started to really build an infrastructure that really touches every part of the university to ensure that our EKU community is a place that not only is one where people feel welcome, but where our students can be successful and part of a family where they will look back on this experience as truly transformational for them. From an enrollment standpoint, since the baseline year of 15-16, EKU has experienced a 16% decline in total enrollment. A double-digit decline, similar to what other comprehensives are experiencing during this same time period. And we know that enrollment is going to be an indication of the work we have to do to hit the 60 by 30 goals. We have established a very aggressive enrollment position that emphasizes shared responsibility of increasing enrollment and retention campus-wide. This commitment serves as a foundation to all of our university efforts. And with time, we are very confident that these actions will be beneficial to grow our enrollment in a very strategic and a very meaningful way. Despite decreases in total enrollment, we are seeing some significant increases in certain areas. Our undergraduate URM has increased 8.2%. Enrollment of our undergrad Hispanic students has increased 43%. Our graduate URM enrollment has increased 25.2%. And we continue to see strong growth in our eCampus online enrollment. And so we are optimistic that we're doing the right things. We're seeing growth in our URM population, both undergraduate and graduate. We know we've got work to do to continue to serve our service region and the Commonwealth, but we also are very focused on our out-of-state partners and trying to bring students into the Commonwealth where they're going to get an education. And our hope is that they stay here and are a part of the economic vitality of our great state. Net price, EKU's cost of attendance and average net price increased 1.8% and 2.8% respectively from 17-18 to 18-19. We recognize that our average net price is out of alignment with other comprehensive universities. And I want you to know that we have taken steps to address our net price. The cumulative effect of the actions that we are planning will result in an average net price reduction as we move into this new academic year of about $2,500 per year. In 2020 and 2021, EKU froze tuition and all mandatory and non-mandatory fees, housing, and dining rates. Although this freeze was implemented for 1 year, it will benefit students long-term, and we are going to do everything we can to keep those costs down. Additionally, in fall of 2020, we conducted an internal analysis of net price to inform our position and really discover opportunities for where we can make improvements and where we need to focus on meeting the market and meeting some of the expectations that are put in front of us by this working group. As a result of that, our enrollment management team has reevaluated and adjusted our cost of attendance to better appropriately align us from a tuition fees and estimated expenses standpoint. And probably the last thing that I want to talk about as to what we're doing in this space is that in the fall of 2021, we will be implementing our Book Smart program, which, if you've not heard about it, will reduce our overall cost of attendance by $1,200 a year, as we are providing textbooks for free for all of our undergraduate students. This is a commitment for us to be the school of opportunity, to show that we truly value access and affordability, and that we are committed to student success. And no matter how you got to EKU, we want to make sure that the students all have an equal footing when they step up to the line to finish this degree. It will not be because of books or the ability to have access to books that keeps a student from being successful at EKU. And so we are committed to making sure that they have the tools in the toolbox they need. And what they've got to do is they've got to bring their ambition and their hard work to make sure that they can be successful. I'm going to stop there, Chair Branstader, and maybe take some questions from the group.
Thank you, David. Well done, and you hit your time marks very well. So good job on that too. Lori, you're unmuted. I'll put you on the spot.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I was kind of interested in your Book Smart program a little bit because, again, I think that a lot of people don't understand the cost of books for students today. And it goes on to what is that total cost. So I'm curious how you're going to fund that.
So Lori, as we look at merit aid, need-based aid, other support for campus, this is a book scholarship. We have a book scholarship had for a long time for our honor students. Every honor student at EKU has never paid for a book here. We make that part of that's part of the program. And as we have studied the success of those students, as we've talked to our student body and tried to understand what the hurdles are put in front of them, and I think Dr. Thompson can speak to this. He initiated a program while he was at K-State, starting to try to take down some of these hurdles for students there. Books are a huge hurdle, and what we've discovered is that the institution on scale can go out and we have purchasing power and the ability to drive down the overall cost of that book in an immense way. Now, just remember, this is a book rental program. If the student wants to keep the book, if they want to buy the book for it to be theirs forever, they can. But the largest part of our students do not buy the textbooks. They typically kind of rent those, sell those back at the end of the year. And our partners at Barnes & Noble have been great to make this something that is very affordable and something very actionable for our institution.
This is Bob Statt, and your undergraduate enrollment comes primarily from the service region. But my thinking is we at CPE would like to have each of the comprehensives emphasize their really special programs. Do you have a good enrollment throughout the state for your both criminal justice and your aeronautics programs? Which those are your strong ones.
Yeah, I think Dr. Stapp, when we look at enrollments, now I will say that nursing and our health sciences program is the largest college on our campus. We have over 1,500 nursing students here at EKU from ASN to DNP. That is the largest single program here at EKU, and they are very proud of their pass rate for their boards, and it's an outstanding program. But yes, criminal justice, that has been an ebb and flow. Post 9/11, Homeland Security's criminal justice, we saw a huge kind of uptick in that. There was a lot of opportunity there, and we're seeing that come back in a very strong way, Dr. Statt, right now. Homeland Security, I think, is up 110% over the last 3 years for enrollment, and so we're seeing strong enrollments there. Aviation, we are really busting at the seams with over 320 flight students here at EKU, representing 21 states, but strong enrollment from Kentucky and from the region. As you look to see who are the other four-year programs, you've got Kent State, you've got Middle Tennessee, you've obviously got North Dakota, Embry-Riddle, but it really positions Kentucky uniquely. And we were very fortunate last year that the legislature invested $8 million in that program to let us move to an owned fleet and to improve the flight training center at the Central Kentucky Regional Airport. So we are seeing strong enrollments there, and they are bringing students from, yes, across the Commonwealth, but they also are bringing students in from outside of the state, which I think is a key imperative for us as we look at the demographics and the population of Kentucky. We need more individuals moving in, and I think our universities can be a catalyst for bringing those knowledge workers into our state. So I appreciate that, and we are seeing strong enrollment there. We are still number one for Kentucky. We still see 75% of our graduates go right back to work in a Kentucky community upon graduation. And we see about 95% of them reporting back to us that they are very satisfied with their career choice upon graduation. And so those are things that are very important. And we highlight some of that in the briefing book that should have been attached to your agenda.
Thank you. That was excellent.
David, let me jump in real quick in the middle of, because other people have questions for you. First of all, I just want to say, I know the baseline of these numbers very well. What y'all have done, I'm absolutely, I just want to say I'm impressed. I mean, so I want to give you that. The book smart is exactly the way we should be going. There's a lot of things on here I wish I had more time to give you kudos on, since I know so well, but we don't have time. The issue that you are going to have to increase enrollment. We all do. You got a 50% going rate. You and I have been talking about this a lot, even in the last few days, and we're going to jump on some of those things. So my question that I'd like for the council to hear you answer is this. I mean, you service the region, and it's a region that needs service. We have to have nurses and a lot more healthcare workers in many ways. You know, can you give us some ideas about what you plan on doing truly to combat what is going down with the, fewer people graduating from college, fewer people being ready for college, and fewer people going to college, as an example, from your service region? Can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts?
As we look at that, Aaron, and Jay Morgan and I work very close together. Eastern and Moorhead are partners in serving this part of the Commonwealth. We do our level best to be good partners with the school districts, to be good partners with the corporate sector, to work with those municipalities and governments to be there to try to solve complex problems. For us, as we look at being centrally located in the state, and we look east and we look west and we look north and south, we know that Kentucky is always going to be strong for us. That is who we are as an institution. We're not going to take our eye off of that. But I think that you hit on something. We're seeing a big out-migration from Eastern Kentucky, just in the number of families who live there. We are seeing really an exponential decrease in those 18-year-olds and graduating seniors coming out of high school. So for us, a couple of the strategies that are really kind of percolating is when we look at the workforce and those adult learners, we know that there are an immense number of individuals throughout our service region and throughout the Commonwealth who have some credits, no degree, and who are looking for really workforce mobility to really transition through this economy. So our corporate partnerships, we just launched a partnership with Radio Corporation, which is not a Kentucky-based business, but they have 5 locations in Kentucky. They have about 4,000 employees here, targeted at how we are their preferred partner for really workforce education, looking for baccalaureate degree attainment for their workforce. And it's going to help them recruit and retain employees. It's also going to build into those degrees for those 4,000 people who work here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky that work for radio. We are expanding that partnership to other corporations across the service region, and really even across this kind of Southeast and Midwest region. So we're excited to hopefully have several more announcements where those employees, when they're looking at their benefits package and what it means to work for ABC Corporation, that the ability to come to EKU to work on an undergraduate degree or a graduate degree is something that's going to be much easier and much more fulfilling than it had been in the past. We're working very closely with our superintendents and our principals in our K-12 schools. And we're really trying to find those students anywhere they may be. But I do also think that a comprehensive strategy, statewide, led by the council, supported by the institutions, to go out into states where we have a chance to recruit talent from, whether it's the Northeast, whether it's the Midwest, We need to be very strategic in saying, come to Kentucky. It's a great place to live, to work, and to get a great education.
Thanks, David. Richard Nelson, you had a question?
Yeah, thank you. David, you said that your graduation rate's at an all-time high of 52.3% last year. Congratulations on that, by the way. But your target for 2020 and 2021 is at 50%. And maybe you mentioned this and I missed it, but is that due to us being in a COVID environment?
So those targets were set several years ago. And so as Aaron indicated earlier, we are now going through the new data setting. So we are going to sit down and have some conversations. And I may just jump in here, Richard, and maybe answer Luke's question before he asks it, since I know it's coming. I'm going to shoot you straight here. The national trends, the statewide trends of what is going on with COVID is going to have an impact on every higher education institution in America. No one is going to be insulated from this fully. Not the Ivy Leagues, not the community colleges, and most certainly not the comprehensives and those of us who are in the residential 4-year kind of sector. As we look at the data, we know that there's a lot of challenges. For the most part, I would say that no institution who's going to report out here today has had a counselor, an admissions counselor in a high school since March of last year. Maybe you've snuck in here or there, but on whole, the college spotlight days have not happened. The ability to do campus tours in a very meaningful and large scale way has not happened. And here we sit today on January the 28th, eager to get into those schools, to engage with those students, and to really say, hey, we know that you've lost a lot. Prom, homecoming, the senior dances, you name it. There is a chance here, I think, just on a global perspective, that we could have a lost generation. And we have got to do everything we can to fix that. And so as Dr. Thompson indicated, we have been having some conversations. We must have deeper, more meaningful interaction with our K-12 partners. And what I mean by that is we need access to the data of these students' ACT scores. We need access to be able to communicate with these students and not put so much pressure on those K-12 counselors to be really the gatekeeper. And I think this pandemic has exposed some weaknesses in the ability to really get to those students and influence that 50% going rate in a positive direction. And so Aaron and I are committed to working with Dr. Glass to see if we can flatten some of those hurdles that are in front of us, and really try to engage the public school districts across the state in saying, hey, we want to be partners with our K-12. And that's not just Eastern, that's all of our universities. That's going to serve us better. Likewise, our KCTCS partners, the transcripting of those students earlier, making that pathway from 2-year to 4-year, or from credential to 4-year, we got to continue to work on that and make it better. And I think we've got some ideas of how we can do that. And I think that we look forward to reporting out on those things. But the time is now. I will tell you that the next 60 days are critically important for all of us to build a freshman class that's going to be part of the 4-year, 5-year, 6-year graduation rates that we're going to be looking at over the next decade. And so I would implore us all to really throw in, to be committed to this work, and know that there is work to do.
David, I appreciate you going down that road, because it's a very important topic. And I think you presented that in a very calm, rational perspective, but also just it should raise that topic on our radar screen significantly. One of the topics I'm sure that Aaron Thompson is going to discuss tomorrow afternoon in our business meeting is the FAFSA application rate that right now, and it's about 20% behind where it should be right now in a typical cycle. That was discussed yesterday during our Commonwealth Education Continuum meeting, kickoff meeting that we had yesterday afternoon. So that's giving you a little bit of sense of scale, a little bit of sense of context. So just keep that in the back of your mind as we're moving forward through these discussions today and tomorrow.
And Branstader, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, David, real quick, then I'll move to video.
I was going to simply say that, during this period of time, during this pandemic, though, I think it has stretched and created innovations in how we recruit students, how we retain students, how we engage with students. And those things are going to pay benefits in the long term. Things that we thought wouldn't work, a virtual tour that, really was it was more intimate. It was more one-on-one. We've learned a lot of those things. And I think we've really honed those and we're using them to the best of our advantage. But as we look at certain things, I think you'll look at most of the institutions, you'll realize that most of us have gone to test optional admission, that we've looked at our merit awards and we're putting more emphasis on GPA and less emphasis on standardized test scores. And last year, we took in a student body, and we're probably going to take in a student body this year where we don't have as much data about those students. We don't know as much about them as we've known in the past. And so when they get here, and particularly in a pandemic environment this past fall, when we can't engage with them in really sincere one-on-one types of engagements, it makes that harder. And I will say that, this is, yes, a quest for knowledge, but it is more than that. It is a journey that is all about relationships. And I think that this pandemic has challenged those relationships.
Did you?
So you just touched on this, David, but the test optional trend that we're kind of seeing nationally. And if you kind of look at what's happening, a lot of the institutions across the country, they've made exceptions, obviously, for the incoming class this year, but many of them are trending towards, in a sense, doing away with standardized testing as a measure for admissions. We didn't think we would see this day come, but I really think it's sort of escalating, and this is probably coming within the next 4 to 5 years. There's going to be a significant downward trend in colleges needing. So this is not just a question for you, but for all of our colleges. What are the new metrics then for admission? GPA is a good one, but we all know that that can be very subjective from high school to high school, county to county. So, there's some things to think about there. But in addition to just sort of seeing the trend of the standardized tests going away, there's also the trend from the student side, where when they are seeing that these admission criteria are test optional, there's a massive increase in the number of applications to the colleges. If you look at all the colleges across the country this year, every single one of them has had to delay their admissions decisions by a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, even more, just because they never expected to see the influx of applications that have come in. We've seen universities that have gotten 60, 70, 80, 90% more applications than they've ever seen before. So I'd just love to get your thoughts. And, perhaps this is for all of our presidents in our business meeting as well, but it's just something that's coming at us very fast. And, I'd love to see what we as a collective are thinking about, which direction we're going as a state.
Well, let me touch on kind of our perspective, and I'm going to ask Aaron maybe tomorrow or maybe today to talk. I know this is an area that kind of on a national SHIO standpoint, he's got some perspectives about, what is the indicator of success. But I think that here at EKU, what we have seen, we kind of know kind of where the sweet spot is for us on the standardized testing. We've got enough data to know kind of who our students are. And so much of that standardized testing, the output is very, it makes sense. It's about the inputs. And so as we look at our K-12 partners, the preparedness for those students to take those tests and be successful in that environment, this P20 model that we're working on here is absolutely essential to see the college going rate and the student success metrics is, kind of go in the right direction. If they are not ready when they get here, then getting them ready and getting them out in a timely way, fashion is nearly impossible. So I think that we can look at the data and we know that GPA is a great indicator of a student's really willingness to put in the work. And we have got so many wraparound services. We are confident that we are probably one of the best equipped institutions, not just in the state, but maybe in the nation, to help students who are not necessarily as ready as they need to be. We've made immense investments in those services, in our living learning communities, with some of the academies I talked about earlier. So as we look at that, I think that GPA is a great indicator. I will tell you that I believe the standardized assessment has merit in identifying some of the weaknesses that a student might have that would say, do we need to get them more help in reading or in English or in math or in science? I think that that's where it really provides the most help, is what are the student support services that we need so that we can help them along their way. You know, likewise, as I think about kind of where we go from here, I know we've talked a lot about dual credit, and I think that's a broader conversation we've got to have as a state, because I know we see those students retaining, persisting, and graduating at a higher rate than almost any other population. But I think we have to be very careful in thinking that every high school student in Kentucky is ready to do college work in high school, because not every high school student, we see this, is prepared to go to college. And so we've got to be real about saying, is college work really appropriate in the high school environment? Or do we need to better focus on what a gold standard high school diploma means in Kentucky? That means you are ready for career or for college, and think about those pathways in a very intentional way. One of the big challenges when we look at particularly this college readiness is most of the students who come to us with dual credit have already completed their English and math requirement, and they've done it somewhere else. And we've had very little input on that. And I would ask Dr. Stad, who's in the classroom, who is teaching, you know, I think that there is something too, particularly if your major is in the field in which you're taking that dual credit, that it is better if you come here or go to any of our institutions and take those courses within the curriculum that is designed for the major. If you're going to be a biology major, I would probably not recommend taking biology dual credit, and really kind of, you think you're getting ahead, but sometimes you could be getting behind. And so I simply offer that the AP courses, the more AP we see, we run an AP Institute here at EKU. We believe in the AP process. Those students are the highest retention, persistence, and when we look at all of the student success metrics, those are some of the best of the best. And so we really believe in AP here as one of those standards that are a good indicator for success as well.
I'll second what you just said. And from the classroom standpoint, yes, the high school courses often are good, but the students need to get, I guess my word is, up to speed in their majors, that they really don't get that aspect in the dual credit courses, or don't get as much of it.
At the risk of Chair Branstader saying we're way past time, I'll say it in about 30 seconds. Biddy, we were the first state that went to a test optional minimum admissions policy when I first came in here. What we know is that a high school GPA, if you take all the high schools of varying quality, the aggregate is still the best predictor. The classes that are in those areas, STEM areas and so on, that GPA makes it even more predictive model. But David said it well. Where we see really the benefit are those wraparound services in the first 2 years. That's why if you have below a 2.5 now and you take a student, you have to give them those wraparound services or you can't accept them. So what we found is exactly that. The ACT, SAT, some other standardized are really good for placement, but not good for predictions of success or for admissions. There's a whole lot more to this. Also on the curricular alignment with the dual credit is key to this P20 policy that we're talking about. We need to be aligning them earlier toward this, as well as recruiting. This P20 effort to me is one of the biggest, if we do it right, maybe one of the biggest saviors. There's a lot more to that story, Chair Branstader. Thank you for giving me 30 extras.
Yes, there is a lot more to that story, and that may be a good topic for us to follow up on at a future meeting, and hopefully one where we can all be together in the same room and have some really robust discussions. We are now at a break, and Heather's been pinging me to let me know we are running over. So we'll give everybody a 7-minute break, come back at 2:45, and Murray State University President Bob Jackson will be joining us. So see you guys in a couple minutes. Thanks.
Thank you all. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, we are back, and we are back live on YouTube and back on schedules. So I want to welcome Murray State University President Bob Jackson to the discussion. President Jackson, we've got about 15 minutes for if you could give us an overview of where things stand on campus right now, and then we'll open up the floor to questions. So the floor is yours.
Chair Branstader, thank you, Dr. Thompson and members of the council. Before I go through the numbers, a few things I want to say and want to point out, and a couple of folks I want to recognize. I won't take a lot of time here. But first, on behalf of Murray State University and as convener of the university presidents, I want to thank all of you for what you do for higher education in the Commonwealth. We have lots to do. We all know that. We're making progress, and we appreciate your time and the work that each of you put into this. We're at the beginning of the end of this pandemic, at least we hope and pray. It's been the toughest year of our professional careers. I'm sure all of us would say. It's tough on our country, our people, our economy, our faculty, our staff, our students, our families, and our colleges and universities. And that's not gone unnoticed, I know, on you all, and I've heard some of the other presentations today as well point the same thing out. Also, this is important. I want to publicly thank, and I want to say this publicly to each of you today. I want to thank Dr. Thompson and Dr. Thompson's staff at the CPE. The last year has been difficult. The last year has put a lot of pressure on all of you and the CPE in general and Dr. Thompson. And I want to add to that my university president colleagues and thank them as well. The past year, and I think Dr. Thompson, President Thompson would agree with me, we've all worked together more closely than any time that I've seen in probably our history. I've been around and doing this work for a long time, as many of you have, in some capacity. And this past year, we've met weekly. Some weeks we've met more than once a week. We've met regularly throughout the rest of the year. Excellent collaboration support from all of our institutions. We've worked on things like performance funding. We've worked on pension issues. Daily, we address COVID-19 issues. And I just simply want to point those items out and to thank everyone from the standpoint of their work and how we've handled this past year. In a difficult environment as we've had, the collaboration is key. And we've had that from the CPE, President Thompson, as well as from all of our colleagues. At Murray State University, just pre-pandemic, we started working aggressively on a new strategic plan. We finished that strategic plan and had to take some different turns and make some additional tweaks because of the pandemic. But one thing that we focus on, and we state it often, those of you who know me have heard me say this many, many times over many years, but we focus on academic quality, we focus on access, and we focus on affordability. And the years that I had the honor of serving in the state Senate, I talked about those things then, and I still talk about those things today. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to talk on with a group in regard to those particular topics. So many of the things you'll hear me say today when we get into the metrics, you'll hear me talk about, especially access and affordability. 2 years ago, I've been in this job since August of 2018. We put in place a Murray State promise to make Murray State and higher education more affordable. We've stressed that throughout our region and multi-state region and throughout this Commonwealth. If you're Pell eligible, basically you're going to come here free. And we are serious about that. We focused on that and it's very, very important to us. We're proud of many things here at the institution. Many publications point us out as one of the finest public institutions in the South and one of the finest in this Commonwealth, and probably the thing I'm most proud of and is Washington Monthly, Money Magazine. I can name you a number of others, say that if you want the best value, if you want the highest quality at the best price, the best value, Murray State University is the university for you. 99% of our students receive scholarships or need-based aid or some other type of financial aid. A first-time full-time undergraduate will receive about $10,500. Last year, we awarded a record $115 million of scholarships and financial aid. Several millions of dollars came out of our foundation. We have a large foundation that has been around for a long, long time, that supports us in those areas as well. So again, everything that we're doing, whether it's test optional, and I could talk about a number of these items, focuses around quality, access, and affordability. I'll stop there in regard to those type of remarks, but I want to thank you again. And let me hit some of the highlights, Chair Branstader, in regard to the placemat, as we call it. So that's in front of you or on the screen in regard to, and this may not be in the exact order that you're seeing it on the screen, undergraduate enrollment. So the university has increased by almost 6% our first-time freshmen this past year. It's the second year in a row where we've increased our first-time freshmen, first-time transfers, and first-time graduate students. So we've really focused, laser-like focused, the last 2.5 years on recruiting, working in our region very hard, working across the Commonwealth very hard, working in our multi-state region very hard because of our location. And I know those of you who are from far western Kentucky fully understand our location and proximity to other states. The university saw small declines in overall undergraduate enrollment. A lot of that was due to our dual credit program, what we call Racer Academy. So we were down about 300 students in our dual credit Racer Academy area. URM undergraduate and adult undergraduate were down slightly, 26 and 28 students respectively from the prior year. In fall 2019, we were up about 6% in URM undergraduate. URM graduate enrollment was up, and I want to point those out. There's a number of actions I can talk about based on questions that we're doing to address some of the areas, the soft spots that we have in front of us. In regard to degrees awarded, the university had the highest increases among the Kentucky publics in overall, low income, and URM baccalaureate degrees. URM degrees are up about 21%, low income up about 11%. Overall, undergraduate was about 5%. Our increase for graduate degrees was the second highest among the public universities with a 6% increase. Our graduation rates was 53.1%. So we've done well in that area for a number of years, and we have some work to do in that particular area. We are off of our goal of about our target of 58%, of course, as you know, as you see in front of you. The low income graduation rate increased by 4% to 40.3%. The URM graduation rate fell, and work is being done there. Again, since I've been in this role, we have doubled our URM scholarships in that particular area, both in recruiting scholarships as well as retention scholarships. At Murray State, as President Thompson knows, we have the Dr. Marvin Mills Center, which is an area that focuses on counseling, advising, tutoring URM students. It does an excellent job and has for many years. It's named after one of the first Black faculty members at Murray State, and continues to be an important part of our institution as we grow enrollment among our URM students and also graduation and retention rates. Moving to retention rates, our retention rate is 81.1%. It's the highest among the comprehensive institutions. It's above our 4-year average for all publics. The university's URM retention rate has increased about 7% to 75.3%. The low-income retention rate has declined 1%. And again, scholarships for financial aid, we've really focused on that area. The last, there's been a tremendous amount of need, financial need in the last year, especially. But even prior to COVID, there was a tremendous amount of financial need in our service area and across the Commonwealth and across the country. And it's becoming more obvious even today. And so we're focused on that area. We increased need-based scholarships last year by a significant number, $500,000 specifically targeted to need-based. The Murray State Promise program continues to grow, and we focus on that with our students as we're meeting with high school counselors in high schools, talking to students, talking to parents. These items are all key as it relates to retention. The underprepared progress in English has increased significantly by almost 14%. In math is a 64% increase. This was our second full year of co-requisite courses, which was a major help in this particular area. Also, there's been a new focus on first-generation college students at Murray State University. And a number of our students are still first-generation college students. I'm a first-generation college student. Dr. Aaron Thompson's a first-generation college student, and things are tougher for those particular students. So we work harder and give more as it relates to those underprepared students in those particular areas. We have a special tutoring center, a center for academic success. We have a number of resources that we've expanded and that we use for those particular students. Our average credit hours to graduation, we have seen a decrease there, as really most institutions have seen, to about 135 credit hours. Our average cost of attendance and net price. So our average cost of attendance is decreased about 1%. And we have a 6% decrease right at that on net price as well. So you'll see those declines as we continue, again, to focus on and stress access and affordability, which is vitally important to all of us here at Murray State. As I stated earlier, most of our students, 99% actually, is based on our recent numbers. So nearly every student here receives some type of scholarship, some type of aid, need-based aid, or some type of other financial aid. We work very closely with families. We have a wonderful staff in the financial aid area working with families to make sure they're getting everything they need in regard to scholarships and financial aid. I am very concerned. Those of us who were participating in the continuum meeting yesterday heard the numbers we've all been hearing for some time. Actually, were Pell Grant, FAFSA, which relates to Pell Grant, applications are down about 20%. So we're seeing that, everyone's seeing that, and it's concerning, as we move forward as well. And there's a pandemic effect to this. And as stated by Dr. McFadden, who preceded me this morning or this afternoon, you're going to see additional COVID-19 impacts for all of us in the months ahead. I will stop there. I'm probably right on my 15 minutes, Chair Branstader, and I do not want to violate the rules. So
well done. Thank you for that summary. I've got a couple of notes, but I want to open up to the rest of the crowd.
Sure.
I'm just kind of scanning my list here of who may have a question.
Actually,
Oh,
I've got.
Go for it, Dr. Stepp.
Well, actually, I have a couple. First of all, a comment. I also am a first generation college student, but to join the group. But the Pell eligible, you say go basically free. 99% of the students have aid. Where does this money come from? You mentioned foundation, but aren't there like a 5% cap on the amount of money you can use from the foundation, things like this? Where does all that money come from?
Sure. Dr. Stepp, thank you. A very good question. Obviously, many of these are institutional scholarships, number one, that every institution is awarding first. So we have institutional scholarships that Murray State University is funding out of our general fund budget that every institution is awarding. Secondly, the Murray State University Foundation, which was founded in 1946, a large foundation, several millions of dollars of scholarships flow from that foundation to the university each year. $4.5 to $5 million of scholarships in that regard. And then obviously also the remaining amount would be Pell Grants and other types of aid that a student would receive. You know, I should point out also, and it's important, it's a metric that we look at closely. It's a metric that I look at very closely. 50% of our students graduate. So 50% of our students graduate with no known student debt. The highest, the best in the Commonwealth. And it's the reason is because the scholarships we do award, it's the low income scholarships, the need-based scholarships that we put forward, the URM, very targeted scholarships that we advance. All those things matter. All those things are very important. And you know, we've been doing this a long time. This is not new at Murray State. We've been doing it a long time. I have the honor, we're almost 100 years old. And I'm the 14th president, so I have the honor of carrying it forward. But hopefully I've also enhanced it, which was the intent, because I'm a 8th generation Kentuckian. I'm a product of our public schools at every level. And I'm proud of that. I'm a first generation college student. I understand the needs east to west. There's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of need. And I think we're in the opportunity business, all of us, everyone on this call, in this meeting today. And we need to be focused on that. And I know we are. If we're going to get to the goals of the Commonwealth for our economy, for economic development purposes, workforce development purposes over the coming years, we're going to have to focus on these things more, better, and harder.
Just a one short question. Basically, what percentage of the tuition goes back into financial aid? Do you have a feel for it? Most schools are between 20 and 30, but.
Right. I think that's a reverse question of discount rate. Probably yes. Is what you're asking. So I don't have it in front of me, but off the top of my head, it's probably 40-ish%.
That's a bunch.
Used to be 42%, Bob, unless it's changed.
Yeah, it's right.
Okay. That's a bunch.
My memory, last year's done really bad things to my memory, but it's 42%. Yes, sir.
Richard, do you have a question?
Yeah, Dr. Jackson, thank you for the update. Your target regarding the graduation rate is ambitious. I applaud you for that. I've noticed in the last 3 years, it looks like there's decline in the graduation rate. And I guess I have a general question that I'd ask of any university president, and that is, have we identified the factors that contribute to students not completing their degree that they set out to complete? Maybe do an exit survey, or I'm just kind of curious if we've identified those things that are keeping our students from graduating.
Yes. Hey, Richard, it's a great question. Again, it's good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
The number one issue is finances. Okay, finances, and hence why we focus so keenly and so much on that particular topic. So when we talk to a student who stops out for whatever reason, they don't come back for their second year or third year, whatever the case may be, That's the number one issue that we hear. Secondly, behind that might be mental health or counseling reasons or health reasons in general. So we're obviously very sensitive to that, and we've spent a lot of time working in those areas as well. But it's something that we watch closely, and it's something that's important to us. And I would think that our peers would probably tell you about the same thing as it relates to the issue of finances.
Okay, thank you.
Richard, I'm happy that in my research, that's the stuff I have. I'm happy to send you out that. I'll send it to everybody, all the reasons why people leave and in what phase they leave. Bob's right. Normally after the second year, if they leave, it's for two reasons. One is not enough need-based aid, not enough money to get them through finances. The second one is they no longer see the value of that degree, or that it was a bad match. What they thought they were getting, they didn't get. So those are the three things after the first year. And after the second year, there's some other stuff that goes to the social, emotional, and academic stuff. So I have all that stuff I can actually forward to you.
Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing that, Dr. Thompson. Thank you.
And I think as a follow-up to that is that's why it's important for all of us to manage our tuition rates and fees well, and we have. Last year, ours was zero. We stated it early and we stated it often. It's zero. And we also, as a Commonwealth, have focused on need-based aid and enhancing that. And we've got to get more of our students to make sure they fill out the FAFSA for Pell Grant opportunities. And that list goes on. And those are educational pieces that we need to work very closely with PK through 12 in regard to these issues. They're important all the way up to all of our universities and beyond.
Carol, I think you had a follow-up.
Yes, I had a question on the map on the success of underprepared students in gateway courses. You have a really low baseline in 2015, but you've made some very significant strides, especially in math. And I was wondering if you could explain how you made such significant strides, even though you fell short of your target. Can you tell us what you did to improve those numbers?
Carol, thanks. It's a very good question. We have a lot of good people here working very hard, and especially in a Center for Academic Success that we have here at the institution, tutoring. A lot of tutoring is offered, and also academic advising, and making sure we enhance that and making sure it's more robust. But our Center for Academic Success has been vitally important. That's where our co-requisite courses reside, and as well as all of our tutoring. So there's a high demand for tutoring in these particular areas, and it's paid off. And the co-requisite course model has paid off. And again, it's the second full year we have used that particular model. So I think those items are paying off for us.
Thanks, Kevin.
And looking at the issue of people completing their studies and getting their degrees, and why they don't do it, I'm speaking now as a father of a daughter who's in college right now, and she's a freshman, and she is very happy. And she's out of state, so it's not on any of our schools here. She's very happy with the education she's getting, but of course the experience is not what she's expecting. And I wonder, is there any concern or any planning being done for that possibly affecting and increasing the number of kids who may not continue on in their education? It's just that the experience with what we're going through right now may make that more of a challenge to keep those students.
Kevin, an excellent question. It is going to have an impact. I mean, I would be less than honest saying otherwise. I think it will have an impact. The degree of the impact, who knows? I do not know, nor any of the rest of us, but it's going to have an impact. This past year, the spring, the second half of the spring, summer, the fall semester into this spring semester has been extremely abnormal, extremely different and difficult on our students. And So we're trying to do, we're trying to offer more things for our students in a safe and healthy manner. Number one, in this COVID environment, we must be, safety and health is first and foremost. But also at Murray State, and I tell you, our faculty here have done an excellent job. Our staff and administrators have done an excellent job. In the fall, and I'll watch these things very closely, we had a higher percentage of classes in person than most other institutions. And we would carry that forward to the spring as well. This morning, our provost, Provost Todd and I discussed this very point. And I think it's right at 2/3 of our courses are face-to-face or face-to-face with a hybrid Zoom component, but a real-time component. So our students have the option to go to a class face-to-face, or they can do it by Zoom. They're still face-to-face. But, and so there's a mixture after that 67%, but only about 16% or 17% of our courses here are purely online. Richard, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you had personal experience with this that you may be able to relate as it relates to Murray State. But we're trying to do everything we can to make it as normal as possible in a very abnormal environment, but it still is going to have a somewhat of a negative impact. And you know, counseling of our students, we've seen tremendous increases, as have most other institutions in this particular area.
So to your point, Dr. Jackson, I've been on campus a number of times last semester. Of course, I love all of the higher education institutions in Kentucky, but I got a special place in my heart for Murray State because my daughter Rose is there. So I do spend some time visiting with her, and I have noticed a number of things you've done to protect the students from COVID, and at the same time, trying to keep it fairly normal for them too. So my observation is that you've done a good job with that.
Richard, her classes, to Kevin's question, her classes are probably at least 50-50 in person versus Zoom, or she's got some hybrid where she can do one or the other, I would hope.
I think most of her classes were actually in person. She had one or two. She's in the honors college, and I think most of those were in person. Had to do with the size of the classroom. So, but
that's a component that makes a difference. The in-class, hands-on, face-to-face experience helps our students return, and it helps the retention model and ultimately the graduation component of why we're here.
President Jackson, I think we'll probably run up at the end of our time. We probably don't have time for another question. Is there anything that you'd like to say to wrap up your presentation?
President Jackson, can I wrap a piece of yours up? I just want to say something about you. He is the convener of presidents. When President Jackson came on the board, we looked at all these things you're looking at, because I have to tell you, he came on board at a really crucial time. I'll just leave it there. This man was willing to actually go deep, saying, what do we need to change now to have some of this impact? We're going to see bigger impact. I just want to personally thank you, Bob, for your leadership this year. And we've worked you to death, and I appreciate you, my friend. So anyway, I'm sorry for taking your.
You're very kind, and I appreciate it. And Chair Branstader, I would say that it's an honor to do the work we all do. And the work we all do is vitally important to the Commonwealth of Kentucky that we all love, and that's why we're here, and that's what we're doing, why we're doing what we're doing. So I appreciate the time today. It's good to see everyone.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
All right. We are right on schedule. So I see that President Morgan from Morehead State has joined us, and there he is.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, or afternoon, I guess.
No problem. I think you probably heard a few of your fellow presidents give their discussion, so I won't bore you with the details. I'll just turn the floor over to you, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Sure. Well, thank you, Chair, and thank you to the council members for your time and your leadership, and certainly your energy as it relates to higher ed in the Commonwealth. I also want to take a minute to thank a friend of mine, Dr. Aaron Thompson. Not only is he a friend, but he's provided great leadership for the presidents this year and really the higher ed community. So Aaron, thank you for your work and what you've done. It's a pleasure today to present to you some background over the prior year from Morehead State University, and I would really characterize it in two categories. The first category is we know we have some work to do around enrollment. We live in a very challenging region related to demographics. Each of you are aware of that. But the other side is really a story of student success, and you'll see quite a bit of student success later on in some of these graphical displays that you have. I do want to say, Dr. Thompson, I'm a fan of this placemat. I don't know what the broader feedback has been, but it really allows us to see a snapshot of what not only our performance is, but what some of our sisters in the state are as well. And I'm not going to go line by line here, but I'd like to give the council at least a thematic feel of some of these buckets. So if you'll permit me to walk through some of these with you. I mentioned at the outset that we live in a very challenging region here, a lot of outbound migration. There's been a number of jobs moving. We begin tracking a student as a freshman in Pike County, and when they're a senior, they wind up in Northern Kentucky. And that's one exhibit of how a number of families in our region have moved around and made it somewhat difficult for recruitment and to get them here to our campus. But our campus continues to do a good job in that regard. Our 6-year graduation rate is, as you can see, is not what we want it to be. And really there's a mathematical piece to that I hope within the next year works itself out. One of the reasons that you see a little bit of lag in 1920 is part of that 6-year cohort contains a 2014 year cohort. And as a product of that 2014 cohort, they were not our best performing cohort. So think of them really as a tail end dragging through the 6-year graduation rate. And when those work themselves out of the model, we do feel like our overall 6-year graduation rate will rise some. So that's a mathematical piece in the calculation of it. We'll be glad when that cohort in 14 is no longer considered. To degrees awarded, and again thematically, you can see that relatively flat, a gentle tick down within the last year or so. We graduated a couple of larger cohorts, but again, a very, very challenging enrollment environment, at least over the past 5 to 8, 10 years here in Eastern Kentucky. Related to the goal there, I think it's mathematically impossible to hit that goal of 1477 if you look at our pipeline. So that is a little bit of an aspirational number, but could be a tough target for us. Related to undergraduate enrollment, a gentle tick down over a couple of years there, some stability in some categories. So with respect to at least 2 of those 3 graphs, we do continue to have a little bit of softness in enrollment and degrees produced. But what we would like to focus on with you is really around the slogan, sometimes bigger isn't better, being better can also be better. And within that, we've really poured a lot of time, talent, and energy and money around student success. And you can see that within that next chart around 1st to 2nd year retention, 75.8%, up several percent over the preceding years. And that's really where we put a lot of our emphasis is once we get a student here, we feel very obligated to do everything we can in order to see that that student has as much success as possible. So even though the sluggishness in enrollment is there, our student success features are really turning around and doing a good job. Average credit hours to graduation, we have one of the lowest, if not, I think the 2nd lowest in the state, and that's a good number. That's a good placement to be low in that category with 134.3 average. A couple of years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, I presented Chairman Branstader to the council, and I said, we're going to knock our student success for underprepared students in gateway courses out of the park. And I'm very pleased to highlight this chart with you. You can see there that English is clustered around the 80% plus completion, and mathematics is up very significantly, almost double what it was 2 years ago to over 61, 62%. So we're doing very well in that category as well. So retention, hours to graduation, student success and gateway courses, among others, some internal student success features, we have done very, very well. And I think that's a nice indicator of the gains that you might even see going forward. Average net price, won't spend a lot of time on this. Our focus really here at Morehead State University has been affordability for the student. We know we serve a geographical area, not only our immediate area, but right across the river in West Virginia, southern part of Ohio, some parts of Tennessee, where affordability is very, very difficult for some students. So we scholarship, I heard the tail end of Dr. Jackson's presentation. We too have institutional discounts around that 40-42% range, depending on the classification of student. Our freshman class would be significantly over 40%. So we too pour a lot of money into the affordability aspect, and our average net price, cost of attendance is relatively stable. We have frozen tuition here at Morehead State for the several years, for the past couple of years, and we've frozen our housing costs, what will be 4 years in a row come this summer. So we're very proud of what we've done in affordability. Second lowest tuition in the Commonwealth, only second to Kentucky State. Moving down the sheet by way of diversity, you can see there that we've made some gentle gains in faculty diversity among tenure track, and we have actually lost ground in management. And one of the reasons there is that we have significantly reduced a lot of management positions here. So one of our tactics of cost control, one of our tactics of overall budget control, while we've undergone several financial reductions over the past couple of years, is to reduce administrative costs. So those numbers in diversity for faculty are gently up and management is down, but overall management is down too. We have also focused on our rankings and really increasing our branded around student success, and our U.S. News and World Report rankings are really through the roof in a positive way. We've gone from ranking 74 in the South to number 17 in the South among public regionals. We're number 2 in Kentucky, and we're pushing forward on that. So really in summary, while we do acknowledge we have a very difficult region, we're pushing outside that region quite a bit. We've established new scholarships within the past 2 years in West Virginia, and Tennessee. Currently, about 85% of our students come from Kentucky, and among that grouping, a large majority of them come from directly within our 22 county service region. So we know that we've got to push outward. We have 27 recruitment teams that last year were out in regional high schools and high schools outside our region and out of state. Unfortunately, and probably much like our other colleagues and sister institutions, we could not do a lot of in-person recruiting at high school. So we've made the change this year to do a lot more digital recruiting. We do a lot of recruitment that is virtually based, and that's worked well. We are starting to get back to a little bit of on-campus recruiting. So again, a focus on affordability for us because of our region, and a very, very high focus on increasing student success and our quality. So Dr. Thompson and Mr. Chairman, I'll pause there and open it up for any questions that you or the council might have.
Thank you, President Morgan. I'll open. Dr. Stat, looks like you've got it. You're unmuted.
Yeah, I always have a question, almost, but Jay, the undergraduate, underrepresented minority numbers, they're low for some school relative to some schools, but how does that relate to your service region, the population of the service region?
Yeah,
do you have?
That's a very fair question, Dr. Stat, and it's good to see you. When we look at our region and the composition of our students somewhat equals the two. So by example, we do have a low number of URM students here at Morehead State University,
right?
But it is fairly comparable to the percent of the population that's represented within our region. Actually, I can't give an exact number, but the last number I saw is the population here at MSU for URM was slightly above the percentage for the region. So if you're looking at it on a apple-to-apple basis related to percentages, we do quite well and actually a little bit above. We do not carry the size population that you might see at other institutions here in the state.
And I also assume that your aerospace program is not just statewide, but nationally or regional draw?
It is. Our space science program is, of course, many of you know, is our blue chip program. We have a lot of great programs here, but that's probably the one that garnishes the most national attention.
Right.
And also too, within the state, pretty significant exposure and a reputation within our state. I am pleased to let you know that actually within the next month or so, we've got an additional satellite going up behind our campus here on the side of the mountain. That will allow us to nearly double the R&D contracts that we have through a variety of things, NASA, Jet Propulsion Center, a number of defense contractors. And that's going to be a nice addition to not only the economic development of our region, but also the revenue generating of our campus. And that's one example of among many that, you know, are hallmarks for us. So a lot of good things going on here, even though we have struggled a little bit on the enrollment side. So.
Morgan, I just first of all want to thank you for the job you've done this year. I guess I want to point out a couple of things that the board may not know. I mean, I appreciate at the level that you've actually incorporated co-requisite models. So when you went there, you were behind the 8 ball on this, my friend, and you actually did. It was good leadership. I'll just leave it there. We all know what it took to make that happen.
Well, it's good. It's having good people, Dr. Thompson. It was a focus for us. It was a focus for us, but we had a lot of great people working on it.
And you also worked really hard to focus your people on increasing the diversity of your campus, especially in the students. And I know you hired a good person for me to make that happen.
We're sorry about that, but yes.
I guess my question I want to ask goes a little bit to Dr. Stats and probably to where Luke was going to go or would have gone if I haven't. We're taking your question away, Luke. When you see yourself becoming something as a destination spot, and we know we're going to have this conversation, right? We already are. As a destination spot for Morehead, for me to come to Morehead, what are you going to be selling in the next few years? What's your innovation?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's something that we've talked about quite a bit here over the past year or two. And I mentioned earlier in part of the presentation, we do acknowledge that our region has a struggling demographic base. It's outbound oriented, and that is a spillover effect for our campus, and we cannot deny that. However, and I want to underline however, we have chose to focus over the past couple of years on student success and quality. The branding that we want our campus and university to be known about is, if you come to our campus, you come to our university, we are going to pour every ounce of energy we can into you from a student success feature. We have centralized advising for a number of years. You can see our success in the co-requisite model. You can see our success over the past 2, 3, 4 years in first to second year retention, average credits to degree. There are a whole lot of other indicators. So Dr. Thompson, what we want to sell is, we may not be the biggest, and that's okay. But what we want to do is we want to work towards being one of the best. And we're going to sell student success. And we want to tell a mother and a father and a caregiver and whoever's paying that bill for the student or providing that support at home, that if they come to MSU, we're going to give it all we have, and that success is going to come number one. Related to programs, we continue to build on our space science program. Really, that's our national blue chip program. But we also have a lot of other academic programs here that are very integral, not only to our region, but also outside the region. Our nursing program really places a lot of the nurses back into our service region. Our education program, we have a number of engineering technology programs that are very vital to rejuvenating our industry as hopefully some form of manufacturing moves back in. And so those programs are vital, and there are many others, but we're going to hang our hat on student success.
You also have, you're working with the App Harvest folks, I know, by the way, just to throw that in, and you have the Craft Academy. So there's a lot of stuff that you've been able to build there in the last few years, I think.
Yeah.
It really helps Moorhead to be competitive at a lot of levels.
Kim?
Hi, yeah, I was just kind of curious, as you look at certainly opportunities that present themselves in the future and how you differentiate, how do you leverage your board members to help you on that journey?
That's a good question. I will stop and say, we have a wonderful board of regents, and that's a testament to their support to the university, pride in the university, not only before COVID, but during COVID. And so I want to make that known, and will continue to make it known. We utilize our board in a variety of different ways. Number one, I talk to them quite often, in various forms of communication. And really, they offer a very good perspective for our university on shaping not only the mission, but also our pathway forward through our strategic plan. We're roughly about 3 years in to a strategic plan that our board adopted shortly after I transitioned here, which is going on 4 years, doesn't seem like that. But within that, their continued support of that strategic plan from a policy perspective, the way they continue to have discussions in shaping that. So while they're not here every day at a ground-based level, day in, day out, they do offer a lot of regional support as we look at recruitment, as we look at fundraising. And we have highlighted in our university foundation and for our university fundraising for student scholarships. And that's been our sole focus on fundraising for the past 3 years. And related to that, our board has been very helpful in identifying donors that we then as management and staff begin to talk to. So really offering a support network, and I'm appreciative of their support.
Great, thank you for that.
Eric?
Thank you. President Morgan, Dr. Thompson touched on the App Harvest program. I was just looking at it and he mentioned that. Can you explain how you have partnered with them? What opportunities you see there? Are there other pathways your university would like to implement that ag economy type of opportunities, you could benefit from, or is there enough there to consider that?
No, there absolutely is a lot there to consider, and I'll give you a couple of specifics, a couple of broad, and then I'll say there will be a few that will come out soon that I can't at this particular point maybe make the announcement for. Soon after App Harvest was scheduled to come to our community, we began working with them. I'm a member of our Economic Development Council, so we had early discussions with some of their senior leadership. We did send our provost and vice president for academic affairs along with their delegation over to the Netherlands to look at the technology that was mimicked here in the local base that they have here for manufacturing or production. So we wanted to get an early look of what we were dealing with and how we could help the industry in general. Related to that, we continue to work with a number of the senior staff here locally and from a corporate perspective around how to integrate academic programs. We're hiring, and I believe we've hired the individual. I'm not sure they're here yet. We have hired an individual who will be specifically tagged to emerging technology and emerging technology specifically in agriculture, and will work with App Harvest and some of the technological and production needs that they have there. And we have begun working with them probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago, or gently before the holidays. We sent a very large delegation of our faculty and staff out to the local site here that's up and running for App Harvest. They had a very deep curricular discussion on how we can integrate curricula to assist them. So not only have we hired an individual to assist specifically with App Harvest, but we're also integrating curriculum. There's also another development that relates to our space science program that I'm not for sure if I can mention at this point, but you might see in the near future. So we're trying to integrate some of the creativity and the technology here on our campus to support what their needs are, not only for graduates, but some research and development.
Great. Jay, if we got a few more minutes, and I'd like to just get your thoughts and perspective on a more a macro statewide topic that hasn't really come up in the discussion today, and that's hopefully because we're making progress on it. I'm not sure, but it's pensions. Where can you provide us with a status update on that topic? Personally, I have not been able to follow it in too much detail. So, do you guys see that as a continued headwind, or are we mitigating that impact at this point in time?
Yeah, well, I don't want to overstep Dr. Thompson, maybe giving a statewide preview or early look at maybe what we might see, but I'll tell you a couple of things that we have seen here, at least related to our university. You all know, going back several years when the pension issue really started coming to the forefront, and it's been rolling around for a couple of budget cycles now. I said very early on, Mr. Chairman, that we're not in this pension issue for 1 or 2, 3 years. This is a 10-year, decade-long issue that we're going to have to work on as a state to work our way out of. Now, with that being said, I do feel like the General Assembly and particularly some of the individuals in leadership have tried to take some opportunities to make some changes in it. It's our belief that some changes are going to need to be made. Obviously, there's a lot of details to iron out there, probably a lot of compromises to be made, but something has to change. Now, specifically related to our campus, we pay 49% plus premium on every dollar of payroll to the pension system. So for every $1 we pay in payroll, we pay another roughly 50 cents to the pension system, and that's scheduled to rise significantly, depending on, Dr. Thompson, which bill might go through. House Bill 8 in this current session is one that is attempting to mitigate some of that pain. There have been other bills in the past that have some have gotten legs and some have not. So from a pension issue, this is a long-term systemic issue that I think Kentucky is going to wrestle with for quite some time. What we're seeing on our faculty and professional staff side, KTRS, is a very broad departure away from KTRS, i.e. the teacher's pension system. And our new hires are selecting our defined contribution plan. We call it our ORP, Optional Retirement Plan. It's a 401k style plan. Many of the universities here have them. So as that goes forth and more of our new hires opt for the optional retirement plan, it really makes some of these pension issues a moot point on the Kentucky teacher retirement side. So we do feel like from our perspective that our long-term exposure, our long-term risk, and our long-term cost are with the KERS pension system. So we're watching that very carefully. There is a bill right now, House Bill 8, that's advancing. Dr. Thompson, I don't want to overstep here because you kind of monitor that statewide. We monitor it as well, and if that goes through and the rates go to more of a level dollar payment or a fixed dollar payment, that is a concerning feature for us unless there are other dollars that are applied within the budget process behind that to make up some of the difference. So,
and what Dr. Morgan is talking about, that it has gone, if it goes to level dollar amount, our universities will be paying more. Now, the governor in his budget proposal has put money in that. Now, whether the House picks it up, we'll see, but has put money in that to mitigate it for those campuses. So this is our hope. It looks like there's a good chance House Bill 8 will make it. I don't know, we'll see. But our hope is that they'll put some budget language in there to mitigate it for campuses like Dr. Morgan's.
Chairman Branstader, from our perspective, we view the KERS pension system is probably a 10-year risk factor for our campus in one shape, form, or fashion from a cost perspective. And you've seen those cost drivers, and in some cases, the models are very catastrophic.
Thank you for the update. We've got a couple more minutes. Open up the floor. I know somebody's got to have a question or a comment. Richard, well, there you go.
I didn't want to interrupt anyone else. Oh, Richard, it looks like he's talking.
I'm sorry, I don't want to. I just had a question about the your space science program, and you had mentioned the RMD and the value to the to the university and the community. Could you? And I don't need, I know we're running out of time, but I'm just curious. Maybe you could speak a little bit more about that. I'm fascinated by that.
Well, I'm the least qualified individual to talk about space science, and but I will brag on the group a little bit in a couple of different ways. Not only is our space science program here at the university an academic program, but it also has significant production and R&D value embedded within it. And what I have found, Richard, to be very fascinating about the program is from a university institutional perspective, yes, we hire faculty to teach astrophysics and space science engineering and other things, so we have direct costs. But a lot of this program is supported for the benefit of our students by way of student employment, graduate assistantships, and in some cases, ultimately employment here, fueled by external to our state R&D dollars that are pouring in by way of contracts, grants, sometimes direct appropriations that are federal or state related or corporately related, private dollars. So to some degree, we're fueling a very high quality, very demanding academic program off external dollars, and the state of Kentucky is not having to pay for that. And that's a little bit of the beauty of that. We do have a very large satellite that's on the mountain behind the campus here. I mentioned we're installing a second one, and that second satellite will almost double what our capacity is for research and development, i.e. the contracts that we can compete for and bring in more money, not only to the university, but our direct community and region here. There are roughly about 230 or 250 students in the program at the BS level and the master's level. It does not bode very well on our retention efforts. It's a very academically demanding program. And sometimes I cringe when I see the retention within the program. But if you graduate from that program, you have a very bright future. And our students intern for NASA. They intern out in California. They intern down in Florida, all over the place. And it's really our national blue chip program here. I'd love to show it to you sometime.
That's great. I'd love to see it. Thank you for that update.
Jay, just one quick thought or comment here. You keep mentioning the satellite on the mountain. You have two types of satellites, one that orbits the Earth and the other that's an antenna, right?
We do, and they correct me all the time, Dr. Stad, on the correct nomenclature. Not only do we do tracking through literally a satellite up on the mountain, but we also build them as well. And there's a large base system over here in our dedicated building that where they have a production capacity for satellites, and then those are ultimately go up in space with NASA and other governmental entities. So it's very multifaceted.
And just you mentioned the retention aspect. I often joke that schools of engineering are great feeders for arts and sciences.
Wow, Dr. Stat, I think we're going to end it. Let's end it right there. Yeah. Dr. Stat, you may not be proud of me for this, but in my engineering undergrad, I enjoyed a few classes so much I took them twice. It was not by choice, but by necessity. And,
high recommendation. It's by high recommendation.
Yeah. President Morgan, we'll end on that. Thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you, and thank you for putting up with this august body, I guess.
Well, I have a little experience with this body from a prior life, so
yes, you do.
I understand. So
right.
good to see everybody, and appreciate all of you. Thanks.
All right. Well, that's going to allow us to roll right into Western Kentucky University and President Tim Caboni. And I'll make this comment before you start, President Caboni. Many of us have not seen a necktie in 10 months. We were getting on earlier, and I made a comment that my collar has shrunk in the last 10 months, and but I can guarantee you I have not seen a bow tie since the last time I saw you. So it's good to see that. Thank you for bringing that today.
Well, Chair Branstader, thank you for pointing that out, and for my shirts have also shrunk during the pandemic. It's amazing what's happened.
Somebody needs to study that. Maybe we can find some smart people there.
My good colleagues give me a hard time, because even when we were spending day after day in our homes, I managed to still wear a tie every day as I came down to the office. So it's just a ritual, and it keeps us all on track. And Dr. Thompson, while he's a very attractive fellow, he gave up the ties for a while. So, but I as I explained to folks, I was in casual wear because I was wearing a blazer, not a full suit. So anyway, it's good to be with you all this afternoon. Anchoring the presentations today, I'll take my, oh goodness, well, we'll see if we can squeeze this into 10 and have 15 minutes of questions. And thank you for putting the placemat up. Some of you will remember that when we developed our 2018-2028 strategic plan, Climbing to Greater Heights, we were very intentional about aligning the goals of the plan with those of CPE to ensure that we had an aligned and clear path together forward. And I'm excited. This is my 4th year at the university, and what we're experiencing is a significant positive momentum, and we are achieving record-breaking successes. More students are coming to WKU because we've made it more attractive and more accessible than we ever have before. More students are staying and completing the degrees because we've grown and enhanced our targeted student support structure. And more graduates are choosing to stay in Kentucky because of our growing partnerships in our service region. So I'll spend some time and walk through the placemats and look forward to having a conversation with you after we touch on some what I think are highlights. First, graduation rate. In 1920, our 6-year graduation rate rose to 55.1%. That's up from 50.7% in 1617. It's exceeded our goal of 53.7%, and it represents, very proud of this, the highest 6-year graduation rate ever at WKU. During the same time, we achieved the highest URM and low-income 6-year graduation rate since we began tracking that 8 years ago. Our 4-year graduation rate, and we took a hard look back on this, is up to 40%. That's grown 20 percentage points in the past 20 years as we focus on not just recruiting freshmen, but recruiting folks who are going to graduate with us. In 1920, we awarded more bachelor's degrees, 3,042 of them, than we've awarded in any previous academic year. And we awarded the highest number of URM baccalaureate degrees since 2010, when that definition was developed. And we exceeded our goal of 347. We're going to continue working that. We awarded the most STEM H baccalaureate degrees this past year, 928, since we started tracking that in 2011. And that gets us closer, we're not there yet, to our goal of 1,021. And our increase over the last year of our low-income baccalaureate degrees and graduate professional degrees is moving in the right direction. We've moved down the time to degree from 4.28 years in 08-09 to 3.96 years in 1920. We can talk about kind of how we've done that, but also some of what I think are issues with going too far in that direction. On our undergraduate enrollment, most of the decrease you see in the overall enrollment is a drop of dual credit students, directly a result of COVID-19. Much of our dual credit work, it's chemistry and it requires physical labs. And with all the virtual and hybrid learning, many of our partners chose not to offer those courses this past fall. But we also have some senior drop off, but that's a good thing because so many more of our students are graduating quickly. With all the challenges of the pandemic and all the issues that we've all faced, I'm really proud of our enrollment and engagement crew. We enrolled the largest one-year increase in the size of our freshman class, and we've seen at any time during the past 3 decades. We were up 406 students in the first-year class from the fall of 2019. It brought with it the highest GPA in WKU's history. We continue to focus on access and opportunity as well. We have a newly revamped freshman scholarship model, and we coupled that with aggressive affordability marketing and outreach. And it's one of the reasons we had this great historic growth. And because we put that new program into place, we essentially doubled the number of freshmen at WKU who received a scholarship compared to fall 2019. 84% of the incoming class received some sort of academic award. And at my investiture just three years ago, we launched something called the WKU Opportunity Fund, designed to support young people who wanted to come to WKU. We set a goal of $50 million. We've already hit 48 million of that 50. We've created 129 new endowed scholarship funds. That is 10% of the total number of scholarships we offer at the university created just in the past 3 years. So it's resonating with our alumni, our donors, and our community. In 2019-20, our first-year retention rates are the highest they've ever been. 76.8% for all first-time, full-time undergraduate baccalaureate students, and that's above our goal of 74.6%. It was 69.9% for low-income students, and we're very close to our goal of 70.1%. And then 73% for URM students, which did exceed our goal of 67.4%. In just 3 years, our first to second year student retention increased 6.9 percentage points, and underrepresented minority retention jumped 15.2 percentage points. These are the largest 3-year increases in WKU's history. A couple of years ago, we moved our target from 138 hours at graduation down to 137. For the second year in a row, we've surpassed the new target when we hit an average of 135.2 credit hours. And that's tremendous work by our centralized advising center, which we put into place 3 years ago, helping folks stay on target and get to their degrees. The success of underprepared students in gateway courses. This is lagging data. We did make some significant progress in 2018 to 2019. But one of the things, what I would tell you we expect to see, because we essentially have eliminated all developmental courses in the fall of 2019, you're going to see this number really take off. So all of our students now take a credit-bearing course with a supplemental course to support instead of a separate class that's developmentally focused. On price, the cost of attendance did increase slightly this past year, but what's important to me is that our average net price dropped 2.5%. And even while we do all that we do, we're less expensive than UK, U of L, and even EKU and Moorhead. Proud of that. And we continue to expect our new scholarship model will make a degree from WKU even more affordable. A little bit about what's coming ahead in the last 3 minutes. We have several strategic initiatives that we've been working really hard on. The first, you've heard about our scholarship offerings. Proud to have now the Hilltopper Guarantee, a commitment to support students from the Commonwealth. So for the fall of 2021, for any first-time full-time freshman from Kentucky who receives any Pell Grant assistance and has a 3.0 GPA, they can come to WKU tuition free. It's a last dollar scholarship. I wish we could do first dollar. We're working toward that with the Opportunity Fund. But this goes back to when I first came to Bowling Green. I visited a community center where you could look up the hill in this neighborhood and see the shining university on a hill. I want to make sure every young person from that neighborhood, no matter what their family's economic condition is, sees WKU as in their future. All they have to do is get a 3.0 and they come up the hill and they get their college degree. So working really, really hard on that. We broaden our border state scholarship to provide in-state tuition rates to first-time full-time freshmen with a 3.0 again in any of the contiguous states to Kentucky, so Illinois, Indiana, Missouri, Ohio, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia. And West Virginia is a growing market for us just because we very rarely recruited in West Virginia. We've got about 3,000 students from those states today, and we've grown that about 22% in the past 7 years. That will just continue to accelerate. Our proximity to Nashville is a huge advantage for us there. We made in-state tuition for all first-time full-time freshmen whose parents or grandparents went to WKU, no matter what state they live in. Heard a number of stories from young people who wanted to come, but it was cheaper for them to go to their in-state flagship in Florida, for example, than come to their parents' alma mater. We've done some work there and fixed that, and done some other work on scholarships. Two things I really want to focus on. And this is transformative for us in our first year experience. Next fall, the first year village will open. This reconceptualizes what it means to be a freshman at WKU. We have 2 new residence halls opening on the south end of campus. Young people will come to us, and instead of entering with 3,500 peers, they'll enter with 24, living together in pods, essentially, with a peer advisor, a faculty mentor, a shared academic or extracurricular interest. We're going to block schedule courses. For example, I'm affiliated with the Leadership and Communications Pod, a living learning community. There's a course in organizational leadership, a course in communications, and all of the outside activity will be, I guess, focused on what those young people want to learn about both leadership and communicating. has lots of new spaces to integrate academic activities within student living areas. We have classrooms, study rooms, music practice rooms, faculty office space. So trying to make the 150 hours that young people spend outside of the classroom as academically oriented and as engaging as the 15 or 18 that they spend inside the classroom. We actually are going to create in what was former parking lots a second huge quadrangle that is the size, if you've ever been on our campus, of South Lawn. So that will be an attractive place for our young people to leave their residence halls and spend some time together. We're also going to open something called WKU Commons at Helm Library. We transform our library into a modern, multi-purpose, student-centered building. And I've got a librarian who's willing to say, you can eat next to the books, which is amazing. And we're going to have food service and Zoom rooms and collaborative learning spaces in addition to what you typically might find in a library. So really, much like banking has moved away from, I don't know if you've seen these banking commercials where folks walk into a bank and it looks like a coffee shop. Well, you're going to walk into our library and the first thing you're going to see is a coffee shop. And so really looking forward to having that open in the fall. And last this year, Innovation Campus focused on Warren County being the entrepreneurial connector between Louisville and Nashville. I have some opportunities there with the pandemic and recruiting companies away and supporting them and incubating them here. It builds on the work of our Center for Research and Development. Very excited about that. And looking forward to being back in person in the fall. 2/3 of our courses were either hybrid or in person this year, both in the fall and spring semesters, a third fully online. But as we work our way through the pandemic and we get vaccines in arms, we're really excited that we're going to continue with this positive momentum that we've had even through a pandemic year. So with that, I'll happy to stand for your questions. Thank you.
Thanks for your report. I'll go first if no one else is jumping in. Nice to see you and impressive that you still wear a bow tie in your living room or your office, your family office. Good for you. I really just wanted to ask a question kind of more futuristic in nature. As you think about the impact of what's happened over the course of the past year and you look forward kind of 3 or 5 years, what do you think will be different 3 to 5 years from now than how education, specifically post-secondary education, is interacting today?
You know, I think folks thought what we were going to learn through the pandemic is that we could just all go online, and why did we invest in all these facilities? And see, we finally had the watershed moment where higher education is going to go completely virtual. And I think that what we learned was the opposite of that, that there is something crucially important, particularly for our at-risk students, low-income first-generation students that make up almost 40% of our incoming class. They need an in-person experience, the support that we provide, and we need to make sure that we're here for them. We did that during the pandemic, and we're going to focus on increasing, to be honest, that in-person activity post-pandemic, because we think it's so important for success. But we're not going back to 2019. I think the great learning of the past year has been, how do you take technology and leverage it to transform pedagogy? How do you think about how you hybridize or create opportunities for folks, not necessarily to be in a classroom, but to have, again, for us, what are applied learning experiences? And so I think what you're going to see in higher education more generally, but certainly with what we're going to do, is trying to not get stuck in the old patterns that everyone thinks we might return to, but how do you leverage that hybridization to create really exciting, engaging experiences that aren't necessarily purely classroom based?
So how will you do it?
Carrots and sticks. So the carrot is really trying to get faculty who've learned that through the hybrid experience, how to share their knowledge. So our Center for Innovation, Teaching and Learning is already doing seminar work for faculty writ large. They're doing it virtually now. It'll be fun to do it in person. The stick is really essentially saying, for all of our programs, we want to have some capstone experience that is applied in nature. And many of them have that already. But as we re-examine all of our academic offerings, making sure that there is a connection between theory and practice. So not just learning to do, but doing to learn, to steal from FFA. And so what we've done is essentially embedded that in our conversations across all of the curriculum, and then empowering deans and department chairs to do that work. I think that's one of the reasons that we're having such success as well. The notion that people who come to WKU want an undergraduate experience, that they have full professors who know their name, know their stories, know where they want to be, but also they have an experience that allows them to be very productive in the labor market. So our engineers, they're good at calculus, but they also know how to get their boots dirty. And so that's why we can't produce enough of them. They're not just engineers in the classroom, they're engineers in the field. And we want to do that for every one of our programs.
Tim, Aaron, first of all,
Thank you.
Thanks for the presentation. 3 years ago when we sat down and had this discussion about how can we change these metrics, you remember that discussion, right?
I do.
And I will tell you, you impressed me. I mean, you just said, what do we need to do, Thompson? Let's go for it. You remember that? And
I do.
And you did. So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to give you that compliment and then ask you a question. We know that COVID has shown us a couple things. One, you mentioned that it showed us that we can do this stuff, but it also showed us we can do it better. Whatever the future holds, we can do this better, right? The item I worry about, and we hear this from our students that are fairly middle income, upper income, they don't mind the online classes as much. They just want to meet face to face to have, togetherness. Many of our low income students and students of color have really struggled during this COVID time, and they need those wraparound services. What are you all planning to do to reach out with the idea that we'll never go back to exactly what we was in the past, where you've done a really good job of giving them those wraparound services? How are you going to reach out to these kids to keep these numbers going in the direction that we identified a few years ago?
Well, and thank you for that conversation, which really helped us set a course here, which was clear and in many ways simple. We want to get to an 80% retention rate, a 60% graduation rate, which will put us on peer with flagships across the country. We pay very close attention to those young people who struggle. I'm proud of, even in the midst of the pandemic, our retention rate from fall to spring is equal to last year's retention rate across, not just, it's actually up in senior, sophomore, junior years in that order, and it's flat for freshmen. What we've seen is students who've had that in-person experience retain at a higher rate than those who had only online courses, and that's doubly so for students who are at risk. And so what we've done, and what the pandemic has allowed us to do, is not get stuck in this 8 to 5 model. Kids don't want, and adults don't want, services delivered when it's convenient for the organization. They want it when it's convenient to them. And so, for example, our advising center, we've spread out the time in which that's open virtually to essentially do advising from 7 o'clock in the morning. And I heard one of our advisors providing advice at 10 o'clock at night. You can do that if you're working virtually, and you can do some time shifting. I think it is all about taking the focus off of us and putting it on the student. What does the student need, and how do we meet that need? No matter what's convenient for us, how do you leverage technology to do that? But then it's also around how do you mobilize the institution quickly when someone's challenged. And so the Opportunity Fund, Casey, my wife, who leads that, thought a $5 million goal would be appropriate, and I added a 0 to it at dinner one night. And then I announced it at investiture a week later. But those dollars are there to provide immediate support for those young people who need it, no matter what that need might be. And so if we have students that a $500 car repair that prevents them from getting to campus will derail their education. And so we're going to help them fix that with emergency grants. These are grants that don't have to be paid back this semester, this year. It's part of who we are as a university. One of our presidents, Dero Downing, had a card file on his desk. And if you needed something, you came into his office and he'd ask you what you need, what was it for, how much. He wrote it down on a little index card and said, now you're going to pay this back when you can. You may not pay that back when you are a student, but you have an obligation to pay this back and support the next person who needs that. And so that's another part of what we're doing, really making sure that students, no matter what their challenges are, know that this is a place that's going to help them get to graduation. The other part to that, Aaron, this was really a difficult conversation for us as a community. We were admitting young people who had below a 2.0 in high school. They were persisting to the second year at about a 20% rate. 80% left before their sophomore year. They left with $4,000 in debt. That was awful. And so we really helped those young people get to the local community college. And then for students who have between a 2.0 and a 2.5, we say, okay, we know you can do this, but you're going to need some extra help. And we're committed to you if you commit to us. And so we built a summer scholars program. It's a bridge program. These are not unique things, but we essentially said, if you agree to come to WKU, you come a month before we start in the fall. You live in the residence hall, you take your meals, you get your books, you take 2 classes. If you get 2 C's, you continue on into the fall semester. And we're only going to charge you $500 to do this. So a little bit of skin in the game, but it doesn't cost a whole semester. One of those classes is how you do college. How do you study? How do you go to classes? All the things that we know students that are not well prepared will struggle with, and the other is a core course. And so really it's around thinking differently about what every different student needs. You flip it around, our honors students are incredible. We're going to continue to have amazing, talented students in our honors program as well. 3.9 students who go on to get major national scholarships. We can have the full breadth of what a university should do, and we're going to do it no matter what the economic condition is those young people come from.
Richard?
Yeah, Dr. Carbone, thank you for your update. I recall, if I recall correctly, at the last update I heard from you, you shared something that really, really stuck out in my mind. And it's actually something that I think of from time to time. And it was the large number of incoming freshmen that had mental health issues. And I don't know where you are with that this year. I did hear something in your report, though, about and I don't know if this is all brand new, but the student support structures that I was hearing from you to help those incoming freshmen. I was kind of wondering if that was related to the mental health issues that you've seen in the past.
It's all integrated, right? So we don't know where a student is going to be challenged financially, emotionally, with mental health, with fitting in, with academic preparation. And so we want to make sure no matter what the challenge is, we're prepared to address it. On the mental health side, what we've seen, and we're already investing in those services, what we've seen with the pandemic and the isolation that this has created. We have challenges for our students, but I'm going to be candid, we have challenges for our faculty and staff as well. It's the huge experiments that we've performed in ourselves with social isolation and working through computer screens. I don't think we understand what we've done to ourselves. And so I think for us to be successful, number one, it's students, it's providing the support, walk-in support. So if you need something from our counseling center, for example, it's not walk-in support physically, it's online. You need something, you email, we get back to you, and hopefully we get you in quickly. And if you need something either more regular or more serious, we help get a referral there. We got to do the same kind of work with our faculty too. So we're investing in it. The resources there are never enough resources here. Fully a third of incoming students I've seen in national publications are medicated in some way. And you think about the challenges that provides those students just at getting up in the morning, going out and getting breakfast, much less going to class and all the stress that comes along with it. You dump a pandemic on top of it, and it's a really tough place to be.
All right. Anybody else have anything before we, Dr. Staff?
Well, just simply that we get through these meetings through Zoom and that sort of thing, but I truly miss the personal interactions of the committee and the body languages, that sort of thing. to me, that's very important, just to be with the people and that sort of thing. We can accomplish it with the Zoom, but I think we're better off, more productive when we're together.
I second that, Bob.
Third.
Well, Tim, I do want to take a moment of privilege again, as I have with the other presidents. I mean, we've talked a lot this past year. Boy, have we. And these guys, every one of them show up for the meetings, and we met often. And the magnitude by which we had discussions, not all the time easy, was in fact very beneficial at so many levels, including this performance funding. I want to thank you and all the presidents, since you're the last person of the day, I'll say this, for this. I mean, it was probably as much of a group effort. We pushed, didn't all the time agree on everything, but we stood with it and got what we needed to move it forward. So I want to thank you personally for that kind of interaction we've had.
My pleasure. Although I think I've aged 5 years in the past year, as have my colleagues, we've been a good group of folks working together. And I told my mom, I've worked hard in my life, but never like this year. This has been extraordinary. And I'm really proud of what we've managed to accomplish in spite of all the challenges. And it's not me, it's the faculty and staff here at WKU, our students who took a risk with us, and for having colleagues like the presidents we have. Just so thankful that we all work together, and I got to learn a lot from them too. So as tough as the year was, I think we've all learned a tremendous amount too, about ourselves and about what we do.
Thank you, brother.
Great. All right, Tim, thank you for joining us. It was a pleasure
Thanks,
to see
everybody.
you. Look forward to seeing you in person real soon.
In person, soon, real soon.
Yes.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks. All right. It was nice to have President Caboni's energy and to help us finish out the meeting this afternoon. As a reminder, the remainder of the campus briefings will take place tomorrow morning, beginning at 9 o'clock, where we have the ability to hear from Northern Kentucky University, University of Kentucky, University of Louisville, and Kentucky Community Technical College System. At this time, I will open up the floor to the council members to see if they would like to share any overall thoughts and feedback on the day today. Yes.
Chair Branstader, let me just say, Richard, I posted earlier, I don't know if you read it in the chat, the reasons why people dropped out. So I wanted everybody to see that, just in case.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. I'm wondering, I did see that. I don't know, I didn't see if there was an attachment there. I saw just an.
I just wrote it in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
I had something, a couple of items. I thought it was telling that the universities that invested in what my friend, Dr. Oleka would say, in that counseling apparatus, I'm using that as a very broad umbrella. There's a lot to that, are seeing significant real gains, right? The folks that counseled on financial, on social, emotional, on all those different things, right? And you saw it in Western mentioned it. And I'm not going to pick on Jay, but I'd say that if he was here, that's one thing he didn't mention that they were doing. And I would say as part of our role, that's something we can share is saying, hey, if you're struggling, it seems to be working. At K-State, at Murray, at Western, I'm seeing a lot of gains over the last 3 to 5 years or segments, and they all mentioned that. We didn't have to poke them for it. They were like, and this is why we think these trends are going forward. So and I have to say, just from the time that I started on the council, this is like night and day. The language that they're using, the focus they have, they're not just doing things because they are supposed to do it. I can tell they feel it. They're feeling like, hey, we want to do better. We want to get, these numbers up. And it really shows. I'm really impressed with the underprepared student metric. They're like, oh yeah, they're not really good. And they don't, and now they're like, look how good we are at it, And so I'm seeing a lot. There's a lot of areas that we need to improve, right? No one's saying that we don't, but I'm a big believer in celebrating success, and I'm seeing a lot of success here. especially in the last 3 to 5 years in the trend and since I started on the council. Just very impressive.
Yeah.
And also
I would
think about
agree
the
with you.
data itself, right? I mean, when we started, we were looking at data that was 3 years
3 years old.
outdated at that point. I mean,
Yeah.
it was like there was no point in even looking at the data at all. And the fact that everything is current, I was really blown away to see we have data up until just the last term when students started, and current students that are in the schools. That's just amazing. That's truly night and day. So thank you, Aaron. I know that you've had a lot to do with that as well.
Yeah. The only thing, all that said, the only thing that I was a little concerned at, and I didn't notice it until I looked at Easterns, and I'm not picking on Easterns because there's a couple others. Our graduation rate is up, but with enrollment down and the number of degrees being relatively flat, are we getting a false increase in percent? Or am I looking at the data wrong?
It's about enrollment. We have less enrollment. We're getting more out of the enrollment we got.
Gotcha.
So that's
getting more juice.
That's right. That's what that is. So actually it's a positive if you want to look at it as positive. We're getting more out of the students than as far as success. The other thing I know y'all remember, because it's a policy y'all agreed on, when I came in, when I wrote the new admissions policy, I outlawed all developmental ed courses, you may remember. So everybody had to implement the co-requisite. I appreciate whoever said that, Luke or somebody pointed that out. That's where you're really seeing a lot of this, what I call gas being put in the engine of getting some of this success story that you're getting. As well as the wraparound services you mentioned is absolutely crucial, that none of these folks have done it without a deep input with those wraparound services.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sorry, I'm bogarting the time. I apologize, but I'm just extremely impressed with the efforts on the progress we've made with underrepresented minorities. I mean, it was like 2 or 3 years ago when all the university brought forth their plans, and we basically said, guys, that's not good enough. I mean, if you guys remember, it's like, hey, go back and try again, and look at the gains, right? And as we always said, when we help low-income and underrepresented minorities, all ships rise. All of that with relatively flat tuition, right? Tuition's not doubled, right? So I think, again, a lot of areas we need to improve. Not all universities are knocking out of the park, but yeah, very impressive.
I appreciate the fact that you celebrate the successes. We got to figure out a way to do that.
I agree. I don't know if today's the day to do it, probably today in session, but yeah, I've got something that I'll talk about. It's probably for tomorrow, but yeah.
Good deal. All right. I look forward to hearing that.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything before
I
we
would
leave?
just add, Ben, really quick. I just wanted to say, I was really impressed today. I mean, I sit on Zoom meetings all day long, almost every day, it feels like, and this is one of the most engaging and interactive meetings that I've sat in. And so I thank all of the fellow council members for engaging and being a part of today, because it makes it so much more dynamic and meaningful. And while we can't be in person, I really appreciate the participation today. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. I'm scared to do this, but President Thompson, is there anything else that you'd like to add before we adjourn, and choose your words carefully?
Put a time limit on it. Give them 30 seconds.
No,
I know.
It's been I'm tired, so it's going to be an easy one. I just want to jump on what Kim just said. I mean, you guys are very interactive, and I promise you, when we first started this conversation, it seems like a million years ago, but I guess only 3 now. This is what you all said you wanted to do. You all have led this charge as the council. I just want to point that out, that and the interaction today, I think, is very powerful. And I found the same thing, Kim. I thought it was, you almost wish you had a little more time. The other thing I'll give Chair Branstader, I'm going to shut up and give you a compliment. You kept everybody on time, and we got to the end with some very good discussion. So that's all I have to say, sir.
Well, and my script says we're supposed to be done by 4:30. I think we're going to be ahead of that. So,
right.
So that's good. So I will close, but thanks everyone for their participation. We got to hear a lot of great things. We got to hear a lot of challenges that are coming up. But I think those are just things that we need to tackle, and we will figure them out as long as we continue to work together towards that common goal. Look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Don't forget, once we hear from the remaining 4 presidents, we also have our business meeting after that as well. So hopefully you have a comfortable chair. Eric looks the most comfortable of anybody.
I am. So, I am. I have painted my eyes on my eyelids.
Okay. I'm jealous, but all right. I'll look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow. Have a good evening, and see you bright and early. Take care.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.